Standing outside my locked apartment on my 28th birthday, I watched through my security app as my family pounded on my door. Mom's text blazed across my phone, "Where are you?" My fingers trembled as I typed, "Away from my toxic family." Then I forwarded the anonymous video that arrived yesterday. Footage of them at my husband Mark's funeral dividing up our assets while I lay unconscious in the hospital. Their phones started exploding with notifications. This was my birthday gift to my self-freedom. The video that changed everything arrived exactly 24 hours before my birthday. No sender name, just a simple subject line, "You deserve to know the truth." At first I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. Something made me click play, and my world shattered in 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The footage was crystal clear, filmed from what looked like a hidden camera positioned on my bookshelf. I recognized my living room immediately. The pale blue walls Mark and I had painted together last spring, the vintage coffee table we'd found at an estate sale, the family photos arranged carefully on the mantel. But instead of the warm, familiar space, I knew it felt violated, invaded by the very people who should have protected it. 6 months ago, my husband Mark died in a car accident on Route 38. The same accident left me in a coma for 3 weeks, hovering between life and death, while machines breathed for me. My family told me they never left my side, taking shifts at the hospital, praying for my recovery. They described their sleepless nights, their desperate pleas with doctors, their relief when I finally opened my eyes. The video told a different story. The timestamp in the corner showed this meeting happened just 5 days after the accident. 5 days. While I lay unconscious tubes down my throat, not knowing if I'd ever wake up again, my family sat in my living room with estate attorney Harrison Blake. I recognized him, Dad's golf buddy who handled sensitive family matters. Mom sat in my favorite reading chair, the one Mark bought me for our anniversary. She wore the black dress I'd later see at Mark's funeral, but her expression held no grief. Instead, she flipped through papers with the efficiency of someone conducting a business meeting. "We need to be practical about this situation." Her voice came through clearly on the recording. "If Eileen doesn't wake up, or if she's permanently impaired, we need to ensure the family assets are protected." Family assets, not their daughter's life, not their son-in-law's tragic death. Assets. Rachel. My younger sister perched on the couch with a yellow legal pad, taking notes like she was in one of her MBA classes. "The life insurance policy is worth $2 million, she announced as if reading a grocery list. "Plus the house is fully paid off thanks to Mark's inheritance from his grandmother. Current market value is around $800,000. I felt bile rise in my throat watching her calculate my worth while I fought for my life 3 miles away. Todd, my older brother, stood by the window occasionally peering out as if watching for witnesses. His contribution chilled me the most. "What about the investment portfolio Mark mentioned? They had a diverse stock portfolio worth at least $500,000. And don't forget Grandma Eileen's trust fund. That's another $3 million that becomes accessible if something happens to her." Dad sat silent through most of it, but his presence was endorsement enough. When he finally spoke, it was only to ask Harrison about the legal implications of various scenarios. If she wakes up but has brain damage, who handles the finances? Can we get power of attorney retroactively? Harrison, to his minimal credit, seemed uncomfortable. "These are premature conversations, folks. Eileen is still alive, and doctors haven't given any indication she won't recover." Mom's response was swift and cold. "We're being realistic, Harrison. Someone needs to think about these things. Grief is a luxury we can't afford right now." But the worst part came near the end of the video. Rachel had moved to my kitchen. I could see her in the background making coffee in my favorite mug, the one Mark gave me that said, "World's Best Wife." And she called out, "Should I start cataloging the valuable items, the jewelry, the art pieces, the collectibles?" "Might as well," Mom responded. "We'll need a full inventory either way." The video showed them spreading out across my home like vultures, opening drawers, checking closets, evaluating my life's possessions. Todd found Mark's guitar collection in the spare room and actually strummed one, testing its sound. "These Gibsons are worth a fortune," he said. "Mark had good taste." Had. Past tense, like both Mark and I were already gone. Rachel discovered my grandmother's jewelry box in the bedroom and gasped. "Oh my God, the diamond set is still here. This must be worth $50,000 at least." She held up the necklace Grandma wore to her own wedding, the one she'd fastened around my neck on my wedding day, whispering that I reminded her of herself at that age, full of hope and love. I paused the video, unable to watch more continuously. My hands shook as I remembered waking up from the coma confused and disoriented, asking for Mark. Mom had held my hand, tears streaming down her face, telling me how they'd been there every day praying for my recovery. "We almost lost you, sweetheart," she'd sobbed. "We were so scared." Now I knew the truth. They'd visited twice, once for appearance when I first arrived, and once when doctors called about my improvement. The hospital records confirmed it. While I lay dying, they were dividing my life like jackals over carrion. The meeting on video lasted another hour. They discussed liquidation strategies, tax implications, which assets to sell first. Harrison took notes and promised to prepare documents, just in case. Mom assigned roles. Todd would handle the investment accounts, Rachel would manage the house sale, Dad would deal with insurance companies. They had contingency plans for every scenario except one, me walking out of that hospital with full cognitive function and a broken heart. As the video ended, I heard Mom's final words, "Not a word about this meeting to anyone. If Eileen recovers, she never needs to know we were prepared. We'll be the supportive family she needs. But if she doesn't, well, we've protected the family's interests." Protected the family's interests. I was family, wasn't I? Or had I stopped being family the moment I accumulated wealth they felt entitled to? I looked at my phone screen where their messages were piling up. 47 missed calls. Dozens of texts ranging from confused to angry to pleading. They were still outside my apartment, still pounding, still demanding entry to my birthday celebration. The same celebration where they'd planned to smile, eat my food, accept my gifts, and continue their charade of loving family while calculating my worth. The anonymous sender had included a note at the end of the video. "There's more. They've been stealing from you. Check your accounts. Happy birthday. Celebrate your freedom." I pulled up my banking app, my stomach churning with dread about what I'd find next, because if they could plan my financial dissolution while I lay dying, what else were they capable of? The present moment crashed back as my phone vibrated violently in my hand. Todd's face filled the screen, the contact photo from happier times when I still believed in the illusion of brotherly love. I declined the call and switched back to my security app, watching the scene outside my door unfold like a twisted reality show. 3 blocks away, I sat in my rented Honda Civic, anonymous and invisible. I'd parked strategically where I could see my building but remain unnoticed. The rental was intentional. My family knew my car would recognize my license plate. Today required invisibility, and $32 per day seemed a small price for freedom. Through the doorbell camera, I watched Dad attempt to peer through my front windows. He cupped his hands around his eyes, pressing against the glass like a child at a candy store. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was trying to see inside the home he'd already inventoried for sale. Behind him, Mom's perfectly manicured hand continued its assault on my door, each knock more insistent than the last. Rachel had escalated the situation. Through the camera's audio, I heard her on the phone with building management. "Yes, we're very concerned. It's her birthday and she's not answering. We think something might be wrong." Her voice dripped with false concern, the same tone she'd used when telling me how worried she'd been during my hospital stay. "Can you please send someone to check on her? We're her family. We're so worried." Worried about their access to my money, perhaps. Worried their carefully constructed plan was crumbling. I minimized the security app and opened my banking application. The anonymous message had mentioned stolen funds, and as much as I wanted to deny the possibility, the video had shattered any remaining trust. My fingers hesitated over the login button. Did I really want to know how deep this betrayal went? The checking account loaded first. Mark and I had maintained joint accounts. It made sense for a married couple. We trusted each other completely, never questioning purchases, always discussing major expenses. The current balance seemed normal at first glance, but then I noticed the transaction history icon showing 943 recent transactions. That couldn't be right. I scrolled through the list and patterns emerged immediately. Withdrawals of $475, $490, $485, always cash, always just under the $500 threshold that would trigger automatic fraud alerts. The locations made my blood run cold. ATMs within a 2-mile radius of my parents' house. Each withdrawal corresponded with something else. I cross-referenced the dates with my text messages, and the pattern became sickening. January 15th. Mom withdrew $490, then texted me about their broken furnace and how expensive repairs were in winter. January 18th, another $475 gone, followed by Dad mentioning their unexpected medical bills. January 22nd, $485 vanished, and Rachel called crying about her student loans. I'd offered to help them. Every single time I'd offered. "Let me write you a check," I'd said. "I can help with the furnace repair." But they'd always declined, insisting they'd manage, that I needed to focus on my recovery. Such thoughtful family members not wanting to burden their traumatized daughter. Except they were already helping themselves. The theft went back 5 months, starting just 2 weeks after I'd been released from the hospital. Still weak, still grieving, still dependent on their support. I'd never noticed. They must have taken my wallet from my personal effects at the hospital. The duplicate card would have been easy. Mom knew my PIN because I'd shared it years ago during a medical emergency. I'd never changed it, never imagined I'd need to protect myself from my own mother. I opened the calculator app and tallied the damage. $475 here, $490 there twice a week for 5 months. My stomach lurched as the total climbed past $20,000, $23,415 to be exact. Stolen in increments small enough to avoid detection, but large enough to fund whatever lifestyle upgrades they'd been craving. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel texting frantically. "Eileen, what's going on? This isn't like you. We're all here for your birthday. I brought your favorite wine." My favorite wine. She didn't even know what that was. She'd brought Moscato to every gathering for the past 5 years, despite my repeated mentions that I preferred dry reds. But she remembered the value of my grandmother's diamonds perfectly. I screenshotted every suspicious transaction, creating a folder labeled Evidence. The anonymous benefactor was right. There was a clear pattern of theft. But this felt like just the beginning. If they were bold enough to steal $23,000 in cash, what else had they taken? Back on my security app, the situation was escalating. A maintenance worker had arrived, master key in hand. Mom clutched her chest dramatically. "Oh, thank goodness, we've been so worried. She hasn't answered any calls, and with her medical history..." My medical history. The coma they'd hoped would be permanent. The brain damage they'd planned around. The death that would have made them millionaires. I watched the maintenance worker hesitate. "I really should wait for police if you think something's wrong," he said. Professional protocol, thankfully. No, police," Dad interjected quickly. Too quickly. "We just want to make sure she's okay. Family concern, you understand." Through the camera, I could see my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, peeking out from her door across the hall. 80 years old, and sharp as a tack, she'd been Mark's favorite neighbor. She'd brought me soup during my recovery, sat with me during the worst grieving days. Now she watched my family with narrowed eyes, clearly suspicious. My phone rang again. This time the caller ID made me pause. It was my bank's fraud department. With trembling fingers, I answered. "Ms. Morrison, this is Janet from First National Bank's fraud prevention team. We've noticed some unusual activity on your accounts and wanted to verify some recent applications." "Applications?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Yes, ma'am. We have applications for 3 new credit cards in your name submitted last week. The applications listed a different address than our records show. Would that be you updating your information?" The address she read was my parents' house. "No," I said firmly. "I didn't apply for any credit cards. I haven't changed my address." "I see. We'll flag these as fraudulent immediately. No cards were issued. Our system caught some discrepancies. However, I do recommend you check your credit report for any other unauthorized activities." I thanked her and immediately pulled up my credit monitoring app. What I found there made the $23,000 in stolen cash look like pocket change. My credit score had plummeted 200 points. Collections accounts I knew nothing about littered my report. Medical bills from my hospital stay that insurance should have covered were showing as delinquent. Credit cards I'd never opened showed maxed out balances. How was this possible? I'd been paying my bills, handling my responsibilities despite the grief and trauma. Or at least I thought I had. Then I remembered all the times Mom had offered to help with those overwhelming medical bills during my recovery. How she'd insisted on handling the stressful paperwork so I could focus on healing. I'd been grateful signing whatever she put in front of me, trusting her to manage the insurance claims and payments. My phone screen lit up with another message from the anonymous sender. This time it was a series of photographs. Mom's new Lexus SUV leather seats, gleaming temporary tags dated 2 months after Mark's death. Rachel on a beach in Cabo, tropical drink in hand, her Instagram post bragging about much-needed self-care. Todd's Facebook photos of his new boat, christened Second Chance, purchased 3 months after the accident, all funded by my medical insurance payouts and stolen money. The security camera showed my family still arguing with the maintenance worker. Mom was now crying mascara running in perfect tracks down her cheeks. It's her birthday. We just want to celebrate with her. Celebrate. They wanted to celebrate stealing from their daughter while she grieved her husband. Celebrate the successful execution of their plan to drain my accounts. Celebrate another year of access to their personal ATM. Me. I looked at the evidence mounting on my phone. Bank theft, credit fraud, insurance fraud, and underlying it all the video of them planning to profit from my death while I clung to life. They weren't my family. They were criminals who happened to share my DNA. My fingers moved across the screen, forwarding the banking evidence to my email to the cloud to multiple secure locations. The anonymous benefactor had given me a gift greater than exposing the truth. They'd given me the power to fight back. But there was more to uncover. The stolen money and fraud were just symptoms of something deeper, something that had been festering in my family long before Mark's death. As I prepared to dig deeper into the financial devastation, one question burned in my mind. How long had they been planning this? The answer I suspected would be worse than anything I'd discovered so far. Todd's voice boomed through my phone's speaker with the force of self-righteous indignation. I'd accidentally accepted his call while trying to screenshot more evidence, and his words filled my car before I could end it. Eileen, this is ridiculous. We're your family. Whatever you think you know, we can explain everything. Just open the door. I hung up without responding and noticed a new email notification from my anonymous benefactor. The subject line simply read, "Insurance records, brace yourself." My hands trembled as I opened the attachments, each file revealing another layer of deception. The first document was correspondence between my mother and Mercy General Hospital's billing department. Dated 2 weeks after my accident, it showed Mom filing paperwork as my emergency medical representative. The forms were thorough, granting her full authority to handle insurance claims, receive reimbursements, and make financial decisions regarding my care. My supposed signature at the bottom was shaky but passable. Of course it was. I'd been heavily medicated, barely conscious, signing anything placed in front of me. But it was the second set of documents that made my blood freeze. Insurance payment records showed that Anthem Blue Cross had paid out $87,000 for my 3-week ICU stay, emergency surgeries, and ongoing care. The payments were sent directly to the account Mom had provided, her personal checking account for safekeeping during Eileen's recovery. Not 1 cent had reached the hospital. Instead, the records showed Mom making minimum payments to keep my accounts barely out of collections. $50 here, $75 there. Just enough to prevent legal action while she hoarded the bulk of the insurance money. Meanwhile, Mercy General's billing department had been sending increasingly urgent notices to my apartment, all of which I'd never seen, because Mom had been collecting my mail to reduce stress during recovery. I pulled up my credit report again, focusing on the medical collections. $32,000 to Mercy General, $15,000 to the neurology specialists, $8,000 to radiology, another $12,000 to various other providers, all legitimate bills from my care, all supposedly covered by insurance, all unpaid, while Mom sat on $87,000 meant for exactly these expenses. The anonymous sender had included screenshots of Mom's bank statements. I studied them, tracking where my medical money had gone. A $25,000 wire transfer to Lexus Financial Services appeared 2 days after the largest insurance payment. Multiple transfers to Rachel's account, each conveniently just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Cash withdrawals matching the dates of Mom's new designer handbag, purchases her bathroom renovation, her sudden ability to afford weekly spa treatments. My phone buzzed with another file. This time it was an email exchange between Mom and someone named Bradley Hutchinson, who appeared to be a financial advisor. Mom's message was breathtaking in its audacity. "I've come into some funds through a family situation. I need investment advice for approximately $75,000. Discretion is essential." His response recommended diverse portfolios, tax-advantaged accounts, and strategies for preserving family wealth. Family wealth built on fraud stolen from a daughter they'd left to drown in medical debt while recovering from trauma. Through my security camera, I watched the maintenance worker finally walk away, refusing to open my door without proper authorization. Dad kicked the wall in frustration, a flash of violence that reminded me he wasn't just complicit. He was actively participating. Rachel was now on the phone with what sounded like a locksmith lying about being locked out of her own apartment. My phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Ms. Morrison, this is Kimberly from Mercy General's billing department. I'm calling about your overdue account. We've been trying to reach you for months." My voice caught. I just discovered my insurance payments were misdirected. I'm working on resolving this." Her tone softened slightly. "I see. We can work with you on a payment plan, but I need to inform you that your account is scheduled for legal action next week if we don't receive substantial payment. The balance with interest and fees is now $41,000. $41,000. Almost half of what Mom stole, now doubled with penalties, while she enjoyed her luxury SUV. "Can you send me all the documentation?" I asked. "I'll need it for the police report." "Police report?" Kimberly sounded surprised. "This is a criminal matter." "Yes, my mother stole the insurance payments meant for your hospital. I have proof." The silence stretched before she responded. "Oh my. Let me connect you with our fraud department. This changes everything." While on hold, I received another message from my anonymous source. This time it was security footage from the hospital showing Mom at the billing office. She was smiling, chatting warmly with staff, playing the role of devoted mother, handling her daughter's affairs. In her hand was a folder thick with papers, insurance checks by the timestamp, checks that never made it to their intended destination. The fraud department specialist who picked up was thorough and sympathetic. "If you can provide evidence of theft, we can work with law enforcement and potentially reverse some of the damage to your credit. Medical identity theft by family members is more common than people think." Medical identity theft. There was a term for what my mother had done. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a recognized crime with a name and legal consequences. As I provided information to the hospital, my phone lit up with texts from Rachel. "The locksmith is coming. We'll be inside soon. Whatever you're upset about, we can talk. Mom's really hurt by your behavior. You're not thinking clearly. Let us help you." Help me. Like they'd helped manage my medical bills. Like they'd helped by stealing $23,000 in cash. Like they'd helped by planning my estate division while I fought for life. The anonymous sender provided one final document for this revelation. An email from Mom to her sister in California. "Eileen's recovery is going well, but the medical bills are astronomical. We're doing our best to help, even dipping into our retirement. Family takes care of family after all." She'd been playing the martyr, telling extended family how much they were sacrificing for me while literally stealing my money. The performance was Oscar-worthy. How many sympathy cards had she received? How many people praised her dedication while she committed felony fraud? My security camera showed a new arrival, the locksmith Rachel had called. He was examining my door while she spun a tale of sisterly concern. But Mrs. Patterson had emerged fully from her apartment, now arms crossed, watching everything. "That's not your apartment," I heard her say clearly through the camera's audio. "That's Eileen's home, and you have no right to break in." "God bless Mrs. Patterson." Mom turned on her with venom. "This is a family matter. Mind your own business." "Eileen is my business," Mrs. Patterson shot back. "That girl went through hell, and where were you? I'll tell you where. Going through her mail and helping yourself to her belongings while she slept." My heart swelled. Someone had been watching. Someone had seen. The locksmith looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I need to see some proof of residency before I can open this door." Rachel fumbled for an answer while Mom's mask of concern slipped into fury. They were unraveling their plan, crumbling in real time. But I knew this was far from over. The medical bills were just one piece of a larger puzzle, and something told me the worst revelations were yet to come. My phone buzzed with the new message from the anonymous sender. "Ready for the next piece? Your father tried something that would have ended everything. Check your email." I steeled myself and opened the next file, wondering how much deeper this betrayal could go. The email attachment loaded slowly each second, stretching like an eternity. When it finally opened, I found myself staring at a real estate document that made every previous betrayal pale in comparison. It was a property transfer form for my house, the Victorian-era home Mark and I had spent 3 years renovating with our own hands, where we'd planned to raise children, where every room held memories of our life together. The document was dated 6 weeks after Mark's funeral. Dad's signature sprawled across the bottom as the initiating party attempting to transfer ownership from my name to a family trust he controlled. But it was the signature above mine that stopped my heart. My own name written in handwriting that looked remarkably like mine, but wasn't. The anonymous sender had included an entire email chain between Dad and Harrison Blake, the same attorney from the living room video. Their correspondence revealed a conspiracy that made me physically ill. "Harrison, we need to move quickly on the property transfer." Dad's first email read, "Eileen is still fragile from her recovery, and I'm concerned about her ability to maintain such a large property alone. As her father, I feel it's my responsibility to protect this asset." Harrison's response showed more ethics than I'd credited him with. "Richard, I understand your concerns, but this requires Eileen's explicit consent. The power of attorney you mentioned isn't valid for property transfers of this magnitude. She would need to appear in person and sign with witnesses." Dad's follow-up was where things turned criminal. "What if she's already signed? I have documentation from her recovery period when she was more agreeable to family guidance." The attorney's next email was lengthy and stern. "I must see this documentation, Richard. I have to warn you that forged signatures on property documents constitute felony fraud. The penalties are severe. We're talking potential prison time. Additionally, any power of attorney signed under duress or diminished capacity would be invalid." But Dad hadn't given up. The emails showed him pressuring Harrison, even offering a substantial bonus for expedited processing. When Harrison continued to resist, Dad tried a different approach. "My daughter signed these papers. She's just forgotten due to her medication. Surely you understand how trauma can affect memory." The anonymous sender had done their homework. The next attachment was security footage from Harrison's office building dated the same day as the final property transfer attempt. The grainy video showed Dad's car in the parking lot. He sat in the driver's seat with a woman in the passenger side. Similar height to me, same hair color, wearing sunglasses and a scarf despite the warm weather. They spent 20 minutes in the car, and the camera caught them perfectly. The woman practicing signatures on a clipboard, Dad coaching her movements. Even in the poor quality video, I could see him demonstrating the particular way I loop my E, a quirk from childhood he'd apparently remembered for criminal purposes. The woman was Sarah Chen Rachel's college roommate. The anonymous sender had included her social media posts from that week showing her sudden ability to afford a European vacation right after this meeting. 30 pieces of silver for attempting to steal my home. But the most damning evidence came next. Harrison had secretly recorded the meeting. Apparently he'd grown suspicious enough to protect himself legally. The audio was clear. "This is my daughter Eileen," Dad's voice said confidently. "I'll need to see identification," Harrison responded. There was rustling. Then Harrison again. "This photo doesn't look quite right. And I've met Eileen before, at her wedding, remember? She's lost weight since the accident," Dad explained smoothly. "The stress has aged her. Surely you can understand. I'm afraid I need additional verification. Perhaps a second form of ID, or we could call someone to verify." The recording captured Dad's growing agitation. "This is ridiculous. I'm her father. I'm trying to protect her interests by transferring her $400,000 property to your control." Harrison's skepticism was evident. "Richard, I'm going to have to ask you both to leave, and I'll be keeping copies of all documentation for my records." The sound of chairs scraping footsteps, and then Dad's parting shot. "You're making a mistake, Harrison. When my daughter loses this house because she can't manage it alone, remember you could have helped." The anonymous sender's next email explained why the property transfer had failed. Harrison had immediately reported the attempted fraud to the State Bar Association and local authorities. However, without concrete proof, and with Dad's position in the community, he served on several nonprofit boards, the investigation had stalled. Until now. I looked up from my phone to see the scene at my apartment building escalating. The locksmith had refused to open my door without proper documentation, but Todd had arrived with tools from his truck. Through the security camera, I watched him pull out a crowbar. "This is insane," he growled. "She's clearly having some kind of breakdown. We need to get in there and help her." Mrs. Patterson had been joined by Mr. Williams from the third floor, both elderly neighbors standing guard like sentinels. "You touch that door and I'm calling the police," Mr. Williams announced, his phone already in hand. Mom tried a different tactic. "We're just concerned about our daughter. She's not well. She hasn't been the same since her husband died." "Seems pretty clear-headed to me," Mrs. Patterson retorted, clear-headed enough to finally see through you vultures. The word vultures triggered something in Mom. Her carefully maintained composure cracked. How dare you! We've sacrificed everything for that ungrateful girl. Sacrificed! Mrs. Patterson laughed bitterly. Is that what you call loading boxes into your car while she was in the hospital? Because I have photos of that, lots of photos. My heart raced. Mrs. Patterson had been documenting their theft. The anonymous sender included a note, "Your neighbor has been protecting you longer than you know. She reached out to me with her concerns." I received another file, Mrs. Patterson's photos, dozens of them all time-stamped during my hospital stay and recovery. Mom and Todd loading banker's boxes from my home office, Rachel carrying out Mark's guitar cases, Dad with arms full of what looked like photo albums and documents. They'd been systematically looting my home while I fought for my life. One photo was particularly damning. Mom carrying my grandmother's mahogany jewelry box, the one Grandma had specifically left to me in her will. The same box Mom had told me was mysteriously missing when I'd asked about it during recovery. Maybe Mark moved it, she'd suggested sadly. Men never remember where they put things. She'd let me search for it frantically, let me cry over losing one of my last connections to Grandma, all while it sat in her bedroom. The property theft attempt was the final straw. They hadn't just wanted my money or possessions, they'd wanted to steal the very roof over my head, the home where Mark's presence still lingered in every corner, the kitchen where he'd made me breakfast every Sunday, the study where he'd graded papers late into the night, the bedroom where we'd whispered our dreams and plans for the future. They'd tried to take it all. My phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Detective Morrison from the Financial Crimes Unit. Word was spreading fast about my family's activities. Ms. Morrison, this is Detective Morrison, no relation despite the name. I've received some concerning reports about attempted property fraud and medical insurance theft. Can we meet to discuss this? Yes, I said firmly. I have extensive documentation. Excellent. And Ms. Morrison, are you somewhere safe in cases of family financial abuse we worry about escalation? Through my security camera, I watched Todd testing his crowbar against my doorframe while Mom played lookout. Escalation indeed. I'm safe, I assured her, but my family is currently trying to break into my apartment. Stay where you are. I'm dispatching units immediately. As I ended the call, I received one more message from my anonymous benefactor. This one was different. Not evidence, but a warning. What comes next will be the hardest truth. Your husband's death wasn't random. Take a deep breath. The police are almost there. I stared at those words, my mind refusing to process their implication. Mark's death wasn't random. The accident on Route 38 that had shattered my world, that had started this entire nightmare, it wasn't really an accident. Through the camera, I saw police cars pulling up their lights, painting my building in alternating red and blue. My family scattered like roaches exposed to light, but it was too late. The officers were already out of their vehicles, moving with purpose. Everything I thought I knew was crumbling. But one terrible question rose above all others. Had my family killed my husband? My phone buzzed with an intensity that made my hand shake. The message from my anonymous source contained just 4 words that changed everything. Check your email, now. The attachment was a formal report from Stronghold Life Insurance Company's Special Investigations Unit. Mark's $2 million policy had been flagged for review not because of the payout to me, but because of what happened before his death. My eyes scanned the dense text, each paragraph revealing another piece of a puzzle I'd never known existed. 2 weeks before the accident, someone had called Stronghold pretending to be Mark. The caller, male with a slight Boston accent that the voice analysis flagged as suspicious, had asked detailed questions about beneficiary changes, claim procedures, and payout timelines. The insurance company's recorded line had captured everything. "I'm thinking about updating my beneficiaries," the voice said. "My wife and I were going through some changes. How would I add family members to the policy?" The customer service representative had been thorough, explaining that any changes would require written documentation and spousal consent for policies over $1 million. The caller had grown agitated, demanding to know if there were ways around the spousal consent requirement. The report included voice analysis comparing the caller to known samples. It wasn't Mark. The pitch cadence and speech patterns were all wrong. But it was someone familiar. The analyst's note made my blood run cold, voice patterns consistent with blood relative of policyholder, possible sibling or parent. Todd. My brother had called Mark's life insurance company fishing for information 2 weeks before my husband died. The investigation report continued with more disturbing findings. The call had originated from a burner phone purchased at a gas station 12 miles from Todd's house. Security footage from the gas station, though grainy, showed a man matching Todd's build buying the phone with cash. He'd worn a baseball cap and kept his head down, but his distinctive shamrock tattoo was visible on his forearm. But Todd hadn't stopped there. The report detailed multiple inquiries made to Mark's workplace about his life insurance benefits. Someone identifying himself as a family friend had called HR 3 times asking about dependent life insurance, accidental death multipliers, and whether the company held additional policies on Mark. Mark's colleague Jennifer had provided a statement to the investigator. She'd overheard one of these calls and found it strange enough to mention to Mark. His response, documented in her statement, now seemed prophetic. "Someone's been asking weird questions about our finances. I think Eileen's family is up to something. I'm starting to document everything just in case." The investigator had pulled Mark's phone records for the 2 weeks before his death. The pattern was disturbing. Todd had called him 17 times, each conversation growing longer and more heated, according to the duration logs. Text messages recovered from Mark's phone backup revealed the escalation. Todd: "You don't deserve her." Mark: "That's not your decision." Todd: "She comes from money. You're just a teacher." Mark: "I love my job and my wife." Todd: "What happens to her inheritance if something happens to you?" Mark: "Why would you even ask that?" Todd: "Just curious about my sister's future." Mark: "Stay away from us." The final text from Todd, sent the morning of Mark's death, made my hands tremble. "We need to talk. Meet me at the Route 38 overlook at 5:30. Come alone or I'll tell Eileen about your past." Mark's past. What could Todd have possibly known? Mark had been an open book. A dedicated teacher, loving husband, no secrets between us, or so I'd thought. The investigator had dug into this threat and found nothing substantial. Mark had a completely clean history. No arrests, no scandals, no secrets. The investigator's conclusion was that Todd had been bluffing, trying to manipulate Mark into a meeting. And it had worked. The report then shifted to the day of the accident. Mark's normal route home didn't include Route 38. He'd have had to go 15 minutes out of his way to reach the overlook Todd mentioned. Phone GPS data confirmed Mark had indeed driven to that location, arriving at 5:27 p.m. Todd's phone showed him in the same area from 5:15 until 5:45. What happened in those 18 minutes before Mark's car went off the road? Through my security camera feed, I watched the police taking statements from my family. Mom was gesturing wildly, playing the victim, while Todd stood with his arms crossed, defiant. The investigators seemed particularly interested in him, and now I understood why. My phone rang. Detective Morrison's name appeared on the screen. "Ms. Morrison, we've just received some interesting information from Stronghold Insurance. They're sharing their investigation file with us. Where did you get your copy?" "An anonymous source has been sending me evidence all day," I explained. "They claim to be a private investigator Mark hired before his death. We'll need to speak with this investigator. Any way to contact them?" "They've only contacted me, but they mentioned they have more evidence about the accident itself." "Don't delete anything. We're treating this as a potential homicide investigation now. Are you still in a secure location?" Through the camera, I saw Todd being placed in handcuffs. He was shouting something I couldn't make out, his face red with rage. Rachel stood frozen. Her perfect composure finally cracked. The weight of their actions was becoming real. "I'm safe," I told the detective. "I'm watching them get arrested through my security camera." "Good. Stay put. We'll need you to come in for a formal statement once the scene is secure." After ending the call, I sat in the rental car trying to process what I'd learned. Todd had been investigating Mark's life insurance before his death. He'd lured Mark to a remote location, and then Mark had died in a single-car accident with no witnesses. Another message arrived from my anonymous source. This time it was a photo of Mark's car at the accident scene taken by the first responders. I'd never seen these images. My family had protected me from such painful details during recovery. Now I understood why. The damage to Mark's car wasn't consistent with simply running off the road. The rear bumper showed clear impact damage, paint transfer in a distinct yellow color. Todd's truck was yellow, a custom paint job he'd been proud of, calling it construction zone yellow at every family gathering. The investigating officer's notes included in the file mentioned the paint transfer, but noted that no other vehicle had been reported at the scene. Without a witness or suspect vehicle to examine, they'd classified it as hit and run and moved on. They'd never suspected the victim's brother-in-law. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a video file from the anonymous investigator. Traffic camera footage from a quarter-mile before the accident site. The timestamp matched the day Mark died. I held my breath as I pressed play. Mark's blue sedan passed the camera at 5:41 p.m. driving normally. 30 seconds later, Todd's yellow truck raced past, clearly pursuing. The truck was weaving aggressively, closing distance fast. The video ended there. The accident scene was beyond the camera's range. But it was enough. Todd had chased Mark. The paint transfer suggested contact. And Mark had ended up wrapped around a tree while Todd drove away, leaving my husband to die alone on a remote stretch of road. The anonymous investigator sent one final message for this revelation. "I'm sorry I couldn't prevent this. Mark hired me only 2 weeks before his death, not enough time to gather evidence that could have stopped them. But I promised him if anything happened, I'd make sure you knew the truth. There's more. Your sister was involved." Rachel was involved. Sweet, perfect Rachel, who'd cried at Mark's funeral, who'd held my hand through recovery, who'd brought me tea and cookies during the darkest days. How deep did this conspiracy go? Through the security camera, I watched as the police loaded Todd into a patrol car. His expression had changed from rage to fear. He knew the evidence existed. He knew his freedom was over. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The investigation into Mark's death was just beginning, and I had a feeling the worst revelations were yet to come. My family hadn't just planned to profit from my death. They'd actively caused Mark's. The question now was whether it was manslaughter or murder, and how many of them were involved in the execution of their plan. The next file loaded on my phone with agonizing slowness. When it finally opened, I found myself staring at traffic camera footage from the State Highway Department, dated March 15th at 5:36 p.m., the day my world ended. The anonymous investigator had somehow obtained footage from multiple cameras along Route 38, creating a timeline of Mark's final journey. The first clip showed the Route 38 overlook, where Todd had demanded to meet Mark. The parking area was empty, except for Todd's yellow truck, distinctive even in the grainy footage. At 5:27, Mark's sedan pulled in parking at the far end as if maintaining distance. For 4 minutes, nothing moved. Then Mark's door opened, and he stepped out, his body language tense, arms crossed defensively. Todd emerged from his truck, and even without audio, their confrontation was obvious. Todd gestured aggressively, pointing at Mark, then at his truck, then spreading his arms wide in what looked like a demand. Mark shook his head repeatedly, backing toward his car. At 5:35, Mark got back in his vehicle and drove away. Todd stood watching for a moment, then ran to his truck. The second camera was positioned at the intersection of Route 38 and Millbrook Road. Mark's sedan passed at 5:39, maintaining a normal speed. 45 seconds later, Todd's truck blew through the frame, clearly exceeding the speed limit. The timestamp showed him accelerating to catch up. The third camera, mounted at the abandoned Watson farm 2 miles down the road, captured the escalation. Mark's sedan passed, now moving faster, with Todd's truck close behind. Too close. The truck swerved into the oncoming lane, pulled alongside Mark's car, then jerked back. They were playing a deadly game of cat and mouse at 70 miles per hour. But it was the fourth and final camera that made me sob aloud in my rental car. Positioned at the county line 3/4 of a mile from where Mark died, it showed the critical moment. Todd's truck rammed Mark's sedan from behind, sending it fishtailing. Mark fought for control, managing to straighten out. Todd struck again, this time hitting the rear quarter panel. The physics were inevitable. Mark's car spun left the road and disappeared from frame. The timestamp read 5:42 p.m. By 5:48, Mark was gone. The anonymous investigator had done more than just compile traffic footage. They'd obtained the original accident reconstruction report and highlighted discrepancies. The investigator who'd examined Mark's car had noted the paint transfer and rear-end damage, but hadn't pursued it. A handwritten note in the margin read, "Victim's family advises no other vehicles involved. Grieving widow confirms husband was alone." My family had told them Mark was alone. While I lay unconscious in the hospital, they'd interfered with the investigation of the murder they'd committed. But there was more. The investigator had tracked down a witness the police had missed. A farmer named Gerald Hutchins, who'd been repairing fencing near the accident site. His statement given to the private investigator 6 weeks after Mark's death was damning. I heard engines racing like someone was chasing. Looked up and saw a blue car being pushed around by a yellow truck. The truck hit the car hard from behind, sent it spinning. The car went off into the trees. The truck stopped for maybe 10 seconds, then took off fast. Never called for help, never checked on the driver. I called 911 right away, but by the time I got down there, it was too late. Why hadn't Gerald talked to police? The investigator's notes explained, witness has had negative experiences with local law enforcement, assumed they wouldn't believe him over a prominent local family, willing to testify now that evidence supports his account. My phone buzzed with a new message containing Rachel's phone records from that day. The pattern made my stomach turn. At 5:15, as Todd headed to meet Mark, Rachel texted him, "Are you sure about this?" Todd's response, "He won't listen to reason. Sometimes you have to force the issue." At 5:38, as Todd chased Mark, "Where are you?" Todd following him, "He won't stop." At 5:43, 1 minute after the crash, 911 now, Route 38 near mile marker 47. "Rachel, what happened?" Todd, "Just call, make it anonymous." The record showed Rachel called 911 at 5:44 from a payphone at a gas station 8 miles away. She reported seeing a car in the trees while driving past, gave the location, and hung up. Her own cell phone GPS showed her nowhere near the accident site. She'd never driven past, never saw the car. She'd provided Todd's alibi while he fled a murder scene. The anonymous investigator included security footage from the gas station where Rachel made the call. She was visibly shaking, tears streaming down her face. But she made the call. She chose Todd over truth, family conspiracy, over justice for Mark. Through my doorbell camera, I watched the police scene at my apartment building. Rachel was now in handcuffs too, her perfect makeup ruined by tears. I could read her lips as she spoke to the officers. I didn't know he would. I thought he just wanted to talk. The lies came so easily to her even now. My phone rang with another unknown number. When I answered, a gravelly voice spoke, "Mrs. Morrison, this is Gerald Hutchins. I heard the police are finally investigating your husband's death properly. I want you to know I saw everything. That truck murdered your husband plain as day. I'll testify to that in court." "Thank you," I whispered, tears flowing freely. "Thank you for coming forward. I should have done it sooner. I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am. Your husband tried to get away. He didn't want that confrontation. This wasn't his fault." After I hung up, the anonymous investigator sent another file. This one was different. It was a video message from Mark himself. My heart stopped as his face filled my screen, dated just 3 days before his death. "If you're watching this, something's happened to me," Mark's familiar voice said. I had to pause the video, overwhelmed by hearing him again. When I restarted it, his words chilled me. "Eileen's family has been making threats. Todd specifically has been asking about life insurance, about what happens to Eileen's inheritance if I'm gone. I've hired a private investigator to document everything. I'm probably being paranoid, but Todd's behavior is escalating. He showed up at my work today, said I don't deserve Eileen or her money. I'm scared, but not for me. For Eileen. If something happens to me, they'll go after her next. Please protect my wife." The video ended with Mark looking directly at the camera. "Eileen, if you're watching this, know that I love you more than words can express. Trust no one from your family. They're not who you think they are. And remember, you're stronger than you know." I sat in that rental car sobbing for the man who'd tried to protect me, even in death, who'd seen the danger I'd been blind to. He'd hired protection for me, documented threats against himself, and faced down my family's greed with courage. They'd killed him for it. The anonymous investigator sent one final message. "Your husband was a good man who loved you deeply. He paid me to protect you for 1 year following any suspicious incident. Today is the last day of that year. After this, you're on your own. But I think you're ready. Mark believed in your strength. Trust his judgment." A year. The investigator had watched over me for an entire year, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. On my 28th birthday, the day my family expected to continue their charade, everything had come to light. Through my camera feed, I saw Detective Morrison approaching my apartment building. It was time to stop hiding in this car, time to face the truth head on, time to get justice for Mark. My phone rang just as I reached for the car door handle. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. Maybe it was intuition, or maybe I was just conditioned now to expect revelations with every call. Eileen? Please don't hang up. This is Jennifer Wu from Mark's school. I've been trying to reach you for months, but your family kept saying you weren't ready for visitors. Jennifer Wu. Mark had mentioned her dozens of times, the new math teacher he'd been mentoring fresh out of college and eager to make a difference. They'd collaborated on curriculum plans, shared lunch duty, debated teaching methods. Mark had seen her as the future of education, bright and dedicated. Jennifer, my voice cracked. What do you mean trying to reach me? After I saw on the news that they're reopening Mark's case, I knew I had to try again. Eileen, I have information about what happened the day Mark died. Your brother Todd came to the school. There was a confrontation. I should have spoken up sooner, but I was terrified. My heart hammered against my ribs. What kind of confrontation? Can we meet? I don't trust phones anymore. Not after what your brother did to me. Her voice trembled with barely controlled fear. Jennifer, I'm dealing with police right now. Can you tell me what happened? She took a shaky breath. Todd showed up during Mark's planning period. I was in the classroom next door and heard everything through the thin walls. He was demanding Mark convince you to add your family as life insurance beneficiaries. Mark refused. He said you were his only family now that your blood relatives had shown their true colors. I gripped the phone tighter. This corroborated the insurance company's investigation. But Jennifer had more. Todd got physical, she continued. I heard furniture scraping a crash. I peeked through the door window and saw Todd had pushed Mark against the whiteboard. He had his hands around Mark's collar, shaking him. He said, God, I'll never forget his exact words. He said, you don't deserve her or her grandmother's money. That wealth belongs to our family, not some nobody teacher who lucked into it. My free hand clenched into a fist. Todd had assaulted my husband at his workplace in front of his beloved whiteboard, where he'd inspired hundreds of students. What happened next? Security arrived. Another teacher had called them. Todd let go, straightened his jacket like nothing happened. Before he left, he looked Mark dead in the eye and said, This isn't over. Meet me tonight or I'll make sure Eileen knows exactly what kind of man she married. Then he walked out like he owned the place. Did you report this to anyone? Jennifer's silence stretched before she answered. I told our principal. He said to file a report with HR, which I did. But then your brother started showing up at my apartment. Ice filled my veins. What? The day after Mark's accident, Todd knocked on my door. I don't know how he found where I lived. He said he was collecting some of Mark's personal items from colleagues that your family was creating a memory book. He asked if Mark had left any papers at school, any computer files, anything that might have sentimental value. The words sentimental value dripped with hidden meaning. Todd had been looking for evidence, trying to clean up loose ends. I told him I didn't have anything, Jennifer continued. But he kept coming back, different times of day, always with new excuses. He'd ask if I remembered any conversations with Mark, if Mark had mentioned family troubles, if I'd noticed him acting strange. The subtext was clear. He was making sure I kept quiet. Jennifer, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. No, she interrupted firmly. This is your brother's fault, your family's fault, not yours. The last time Todd came by, he brought Rachel. She was friendlier but scarier somehow. She mentioned how tragic it would be if another young teacher had an accident, how dangerous the roads were getting. After that, I moved, changed schools, tried to disappear. But you kept the HR report. I kept everything. The HR report emails with timestamps, even a recording. My pulse quickened. A recording? After Todd's first visit to my apartment, I was paranoid. I started recording on my phone whenever he showed up. I have him on tape asking me to reconsider my statement to HR, offering me money to say I'd been mistaken about what I heard. When I refused, he got nasty, said accidents happen all the time, especially to people who don't mind their own business. Through my security camera, I could see the police finishing their initial arrests. Todd was in one patrol car, Rachel in another. Mom and Dad were being questioned separately, but this was far from over. Jennifer, the police need to hear this, all of it. I know, I'm ready now. Seeing him arrested gave me courage. But Eileen, there's something else. The day before Mark died, he gave me an envelope. Said if anything happened to him, I should mail it to someone named James Wu. I did what he asked, mailed it that very night after I heard about the accident. I think Mark knew something bad was coming. James Wu, the anonymous private investigator who'd been protecting me all year. Mark had created a network of protection using his colleague as an unwitting link in a chain of evidence that would eventually bring justice. Thank you for calling, Jennifer. Thank you for everything. Mark was a wonderful man, she said softly. He talked about you constantly, how brilliant you were, how kind, how you'd overcome so much with your family's coldness. He said loving you was the greatest adventure of his life. I'm so sorry for your loss. After we hung up, I sat in the car for a moment processing this new information. Todd hadn't just made a spur-of-the-moment decision to chase Mark. He'd been escalating for days, maybe weeks. The school confrontation, the threats, the stalking of witnesses, it all painted a picture of premeditated murder. My phone buzzed with a message from the anonymous investigator. Ms. Wu has agreed to meet with police. Her evidence is crucial. Your husband chose his allies well. Through the security feed, I watched Detective Morrison directing the scene. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew they had a solid case. But we were still missing pieces. How had Mom orchestrated all this? How deep did the conspiracy go? And what other secrets were waiting to be uncovered? I finally opened the car door, ready to face whatever came next. As I stepped out, my phone rang one more time. The caller ID showed the district attorney's office. Ms. Morrison, this is ADA Patricia Langston. We're preparing charges against your family members. Given the evidence that's come to light, we're looking at murder in the first degree, for your brother, conspiracy charges for your sister, and multiple fraud charges for your parents. I need to warn you, this is going to get uglier before it gets better. Your family has resources and they'll fight hard. I understand, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. They killed my husband. They can fight all they want. I have the truth on my side. Good. That strength will serve you well. We'll need you to come in tomorrow for a full deposition. In the meantime, do you have somewhere safe to stay? I thought of Mark's family, who'd been trying to reach me all along, who'd been painted as villains by my own blood relatives while offering nothing but love and support. Yes, I said firmly. I have real family to stay with. As I walked toward my apartment building, toward the chaos my family had created, I felt Mark's presence like a warm embrace. He'd known this day would come. He'd prepared for it, protected me even in death. And now, finally, his murderers would face justice. But the anonymous investigator had warned that more revelations were coming. As I approached Detective Morrison, ready to give my statement, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst betrayal was yet to be revealed. The scene outside my apartment building looked like something from a crime drama. 3 patrol cars with lights flashing yellow tape being strung across the entrance, and my family in various stages of being processed by law enforcement. But this wasn't television. This was my life, unraveling and rebuilding simultaneously. Detective Morrison spotted me approaching and met me halfway. Her expression was professional, but sympathetic. Ms. Morrison, I'm glad you're here. We need to take your statement, but first I want you to see something. She led me to one of the patrol cars where Todd sat in the back, handcuffed and furious. Through the window, I could see the man I'd once called brother. The same person who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd walked me down the aisle at my wedding, because Dad had been too emotional. Now his face was contorted with rage, all pretense of familial affection gone. We found evidence in his truck, Detective Morrison said quietly. Paint transfer matching your husband's vehicle plus something else. A baseball bat under the seat with blue paint on it. We think he used it to strike your husband's car during the chase. A baseball bat. Todd had gone to meet my husband armed with a weapon ready for violence. But that's not the most damning evidence, she continued, leading me away from the car. Your sister broke down during questioning. She's trying to claim she was coerced, but her confession revealed something we didn't expect. As if on cue, I heard Rachel's voice carrying across the parking lot. She was sobbing hysterically to another officer, her words tumbling out in a desperate stream. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Todd said he just wanted to scare Mark, make him more cooperative about the money. I was only supposed to be the lookout to call 911 if things went wrong. I didn't know he would actually kill him. The officer questioning her remained stone-faced. But you did know about the plan to force Mr. Morrison off the road. Rachel's silence was damning. Detective Morrison turned back to me. She's admitted to being present at the scene. Her car was parked on a side road positioned to pick up your brother after the assault. When Mark's car went off the road, she panicked. Instead of calling 911 immediately or trying to help, she picked up Todd and they fled. She made the anonymous call 10 minutes later from a payphone after they'd had time to get their stories straight. I felt my knees weaken. Rachel had been there. She'd watched my husband die and chosen to protect his killer instead of trying to save him. There's more, Detective Morrison said gently. We've been examining her phone more closely. There are text messages from earlier that day showing this was planned. Your mother was involved in the planning. She showed me printouts of the text exchange. Mom, is everything set for tonight? Rachel, Todd's ready. I'll be at position B. Mom, remember we need this resolved before Eileen gets too independent. The insurance money is crucial for our plan. Rachel, what if something goes wrong? Mom, nothing will go wrong. Todd knows what he's doing. Just stick to the plan. The timestamp was 2 hours before Mark died. While I was at physical therapy relearning how to walk without pain, my mother was coordinating my husband's murder. A commotion near the building entrance caught my attention. The police were bringing Mom out in handcuffs, and her reaction was pure theater. This is a mistake. I'm being targeted for trying to help my daughter, Eileen's sweetheart, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. I stepped forward, meeting her gaze directly. The only misunderstanding was me believing you ever loved me. Her mask slipped completely then. The loving mother vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. You ungrateful brat. Everything we did was for the family. You were going to waste that money on your pathetic teacher husband. We deserved better. So you killed him. My voice carried across the parking lot, drawing everyone's attention. Mom's lawyer, who'd apparently arrived while I was talking to Detective Morrison, tried to silence her, but she was beyond caring. Todd was supposed to convince him to share, to be reasonable. If Mark had just agreed to add us to the insurance, none of this would have happened. His death is on his own stubborn head. The police officers exchanged glances. She'd just confessed to conspiracy in front of a dozen witnesses. Dad, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke up from where he stood with another officer. Linda, shut up. You're making things worse. Worse? Mom laughed bitterly. How could it be worse, Richard? Our daughter chose them over us. She let us struggle while sitting on millions. My mother left everything to her. My mother, I was the one who cared for her, who sacrificed, and she left it all to this ungrateful child. The truth was finally spilling out. This had never been about my well-being or even greed in the traditional sense. This was about Mom's decades-old resentment that Grandma had seen through her facade and protected me with her inheritance. Detective Morrison stepped in. Mrs. Morrison, I'm going to stop you there. Anything else you say can and will be used against you. But Mom was beyond reasoning. As they led her to the patrol car, she kept ranting. That money should have been mine. I'm the daughter. I deserved it, not her. And when she married that nobody teacher instead of someone with money, I knew we had to take action. The family fortune couldn't be diluted by his mediocre genes. The sheer venom in her voice made me step back. This wasn't the mother who'd tucked me in at night, who'd made chocolate chip cookies for school bake sales. Or maybe it was, and I'd just never seen past the performance. Detective Morrison put a protective hand on my arm. We have enough for conspiracy to commit murder along with the fraud charges. With your sister's confession and the evidence we've collected, your brother is looking at life in prison. Your mother will likely get 20 to 30 years minimum. Through the chaos, I noticed Mrs. Patterson standing on the sideline, her phone in hand. She'd been recording everything. When she caught my eye, she nodded grimly. For the news, she mouthed. People should know what they did to you and Mark. The police continued processing the scene. Evidence bags were being filled with items from Todd's truck. Rachel's car was being impounded for forensic analysis. The efficient dismantling of my family's conspiracy was both satisfying and surreal. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia Mark's mother. We saw the news. We're on our way. You're not alone, sweetheart. Real family was coming. The people who'd loved Mark, who'd tried to love me, who'd been kept away by lies and manipulation. But there was still one family member unaccounted for in this drama. Dad. As I watched him being questioned, I noticed something different about his demeanor. While Mom raged and Todd seethed and Rachel sobbed, Dad looked defeated, broken, like a man watching his life's work crumble. Detective Morrison followed my gaze. Your father is a puzzle. He's been cooperative, but we can't figure out his exact role in all this. He seems genuinely shocked by the murder plot, but he's definitely involved in the financial crimes. As if sensing our attention, Dad looked up and met my eyes. In that moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. Shame. Pure, devastating shame. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it, shaking his head. Whatever his role in this nightmare, Richard Morrison knew there were no words that could undo what had been done. No explanation that could bring Mark back or restore the family we'd pretended to be. The anonymous investigator sent another message. Your father has secrets too. The full truth will come out at trial. Be prepared." I watched as they loaded my family into separate vehicles, each heading to face the consequences of their choices. The street that had seemed so normal this morning now felt like a crime scene from my worst nightmares. Because it was, but I wasn't alone. Mrs. Patterson walked over and gently touched my shoulder. "You come stay with me tonight if you need to, dear. That family of yours doesn't deserve you, never did." As the patrol cars pulled away carrying the people who'd plotted to destroy my life and succeeded in taking my husband's, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The truth was out. The masks were off. And finally, I could grieve Mark properly, knowing his killers would face justice. The war for my life and freedom wasn't over, but this battle was won. And somewhere I hoped Mark knew that his faith in me, his preparations for my protection, had not been in vain. The call from James Wu came as I stood in the wreckage of what had been my family's grand deception. His voice, which I was hearing for the first time after a year of anonymous messages, was calm and professional with an undertone of compassion. "Mrs. Morrison, I think it's time we met face to face. There are things about your family that didn't fit in text messages or emails. Can you come to my office?" An hour later, I sat across from the man who'd been my guardian angel for 12 months. James Wu was younger than I'd expected, perhaps early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much human cruelty but hadn't let it harden him completely. "Your husband was a smart man." He began sliding a thick folder across his desk. "He hired me on March 1st, 2 weeks before his death. He'd noticed troubling patterns in your family's behavior and wanted someone outside the situation to document everything." I opened the folder with trembling hands. The first document was Mark's signed contract with Wu, paying for a full year of protective surveillance and evidence gathering for one Eileen Morrison. "He paid in cash," Wu continued. "Said he didn't want any traces in bank accounts your family might access. He was particularly concerned about your mother. Everyone keeps saying she was the mastermind, but I still don't understand. How could she plan all this?" Wu pulled out a series of documents that made my blood run cold. "Your mother has been planning variations of this for 30 years. You're not her first victim." The papers showed a pattern of financial manipulation dating back decades. An elderly aunt who'd changed her will under suspicious circumstances, leaving everything to Mom, despite having other closer relatives. A cousin whose power of attorney Mom had obtained, then drained his accounts while he was in a nursing home. Each time she'd played the devoted caretaker, while systematically stealing from vulnerable family members. "But this," Wu said, pointing to a specific document, "this is what started her focus on you. It was Grandma's original will from 15 years ago. In it, she'd left her estate equally to Mom and her 2 siblings. But there was a codicil added 10 years later, after Mom had been caught stealing from Grandma's checking account. The new will left almost everything to me, with only a small token amount to Mom. Your grandmother knew what your mother was," Wu explained. "She tried to protect you by setting up trusts your mother couldn't touch. But that only made Linda more determined. She saw your inheritance as stolen from her, and she's been planning to reclaim it ever since." "But killing Mark, how does that fit?" Wu's expression darkened. "Your mother is patient. Her original plan was slower. Isolate you, create financial dependence, gradually take control of your assets. But when you married Mark, everything changed. He saw through her immediately. Started limiting her access to you, encouraging you to set boundaries. He became an obstacle." He pulled out another set of documents, emails between Mom and a financial advisor from 2 years ago, before Mark and I even married. She was already strategizing about my inheritance, discussing how to protect family assets from poor marital choices. When her subtle manipulations failed, she activated her backup plan, your siblings. She'd been poisoning them against you for years, telling Todd he was cheated out of Grandma's love, telling Rachel you were the favorite who got everything. When the time came, they were primed and ready. But the murder, that was Todd's improvisation. Your mother wanted Mark gone, but she envisioned a divorce, maybe a scandal that would drive him away. Todd, fueled by years of resentment and his own financial problems, decided on a more permanent solution. The text messages show your mother was surprised by the accident initially, then quickly adapted it into her plan. Wu showed me Todd's bank records. He was 3 months behind on his mortgage, his construction business failing, credit cards maxed out. He saw your money as his lifeline. When Mark stood in the way, he killed him. The words tasted like ash. Your mother didn't explicitly order the murder, which is why her lawyer will argue for lesser charges. But she created the environment, stoked the resentment, and gave tacit approval for whatever was necessary to secure your assets. Wu pulled out one final folder marked with my father's name. This is perhaps the saddest part. Your father wasn't originally part of the plan. He genuinely loved you in his limited way. But your mother had leverage. The folder contained photos that made me gasp. My father with another woman, clearly intimate moments, captured over many years. The woman wasn't anyone I recognized, but the timestamps went back 2 decades. Your mother has known about his affair for 20 years, Wu explained. She's held it over him, using it to control him. When she needed his cooperation for the fraud, she threatened to destroy him, financially and socially. He chose his reputation over his daughter. I stared at the photos, seeing my father's deception, but also his trapped expression. He'd been living a double life, and Mom had been his puppet master. There's one more thing, Wu said gently. Your mother's journal. We found it during the search of your parents' home. The journal entries were meticulous, documenting every perceived slight, every moment she felt cheated by life. But one entry dated the day after my wedding stood out. Eileen married that teacher today, smiled like she'd won the lottery, flaunting her happiness. She doesn't understand that everything she has belongs to me. I'm her mother, I gave her life. The money Mother left her was meant for me. I was the dutiful daughter, while Eileen was just the grandchild who visited on weekends. But I'm patient. That marriage won't last. And when it falls apart, I'll be there to pick up the pieces and the assets. The family money will return to its rightful place. The entry continued with detailed financial calculations, estimating my net worth and how it could be divided among family members when the time comes. Wu leaned back in his chair. Your husband saw this coming. Maybe not the exact form, but he knew your family was dangerous. Every precaution he took, every document he prepared was to protect you from this moment. Why didn't he tell me? Tears flowed freely now. He tried, didn't he? In small ways, suggesting boundaries, limiting contact. But how do you tell someone their entire family is plotting against them? He hoped he was wrong, even as he prepared for the worst. His biggest fear was that you wouldn't believe him, and it would drive you apart. Wu was right. Mark had tried. Comments about Mom being manipulative that I dismissed as personality conflicts, suggestions that we limit financial information shared with family that I'd seen as overprotective, his reluctance to attend family gatherings that I'd attributed to introversion. He'd been trying to shield me while respecting my love for people who didn't deserve it. The investigation will uncover all of this, Wu continued. Your brother will likely get life without parole for murder. Your mother is looking at 20 to 30 years for conspiracy and fraud. Rachel might get 5 to 10 as an accomplice. Your father, that depends on how cooperative he is. What happens now? Now you heal, you testify, you reclaim your life, and you honor Mark's memory by living the life he died trying to protect. Wu smiled sadly. He talked about you constantly during our meetings. Your kindness, your intelligence, your resilience. He said you'd been so starved for real love from your family that you couldn't see their toxicity. But he believed that when the truth came out, you'd be strong enough to handle it. I thought about Mark's video message, his words about my strength. Even facing death, he'd believed in me. Thank you, I told Wu, for everything, for watching over me this year. I was paid through today, he said. After this, you won't need me. You have real family now, Mark's family. And more importantly, you have the truth. Your mother's hold over you was built on lies and manipulation. That power is broken now. As I left Wu's office carrying copies of evidence that would ensure justice for Mark, I felt the weight of 28 years of deception lifting. My family hadn't just tried to steal my money or even my life. They'd tried to steal my reality, replacing it with their twisted version where I owed them everything. But Mark had given me the greatest gift possible, the truth, and with it the freedom to build a life free from their poison. The full truth was devastating, but it was also liberation. My phone rang as I sat in my car outside James Wu's office, still processing the tsunami of revelations. The number was unfamiliar, but after today, unknown callers had become harbingers of truth rather than sources of anxiety. Eileen, this is Patricia Morrison, Mark's mother. Please don't hang up. The voice I'd been conditioned to fear, painted by my family as cold, judgmental, unforgiving, was warm and trembling with emotion. I gripped the phone tighter, tears already forming. Patricia, I thought you hated me. They told me you blamed me for Mark's death. A sob escaped through the phone. Oh, sweetheart, no, never. We've been trying to reach you since the funeral. Your family told us you never wanted to see us again, that you held us responsible somehow. They said you were too fragile, that contact with us would cause a breakdown. The lies upon lies were staggering. My family had isolated me from the very people who could have provided real support, all while pretending to care for my well-being. We hired our own investigator. Patricia continued, her voice stronger now. We knew something was wrong when you wouldn't return calls when your mother intercepted our letters. Dana drove by your apartment so many times hoping to catch you alone, but someone from your family was always there. Dana, Mark's younger sister, who'd been my maid of honor, who'd spent hours helping me choose wedding flowers, who'd called me the sister she'd always wanted. I'd been told she'd written me off, called me a gold digger who'd gotten Mark killed. Where are you now? Patricia asked urgently. Are you safe? We saw the arrests on the news. Anthony is already on his way to you. He should be there in 20 minutes. I'm in my car outside the private investigator's office. I'm overwhelmed but safe. Come to our house, please. Your room is still ready. We never changed it after you and Mark visited last Christmas. We have something important to give you, something Mark arranged before. Her voice caught. Your room, not the guest room. Your room. Even believing I hated them, they'd kept space for me in their home. 25 minutes later, Anthony's familiar blue Honda pulled up beside my rental car. Mark's younger brother looked exactly as I remembered, but aged by grief. The same kind eyes, the same gentle manner that all the Morrison siblings shared. He approached my window carefully as if I might spook and run. Eileen, he said simply, and that one word carried such relief, such joy, that I broke down completely. He waited while I sobbed, then gently said, Follow me home. Mom's making your favorite. Remember her famous lasagna? She never forgot you love extra ricotta. The drive to the Morrison family home was surreal. Every turn brought memories: the coffee shop where Mark and I had stopped every visit, the park where we'd played frisbee with his nieces and nephews, the street corner where he'd first told his family we were engaged. I'd been erased from these places by my family's lies, but now I was returning. Patricia was waiting on the front porch, Dana beside her. The moment I parked, they rushed toward me. Patricia reached me first, pulling me into the kind of embrace I'd craved for months. Motherly, protective, genuine. My sweet girl, she whispered. We've been so worried. When we heard about Mark, then couldn't reach you. We thought we'd lost you both. Dana joined the hug, crying openly. They told us horrible things. Said you were angry we didn't protect Mark, better that you blamed us for introducing you two. We wrote letters every week for 6 months. Did you get any of them? I shook my head, unable to speak through the tears. My family had stolen even condolences, even love sent through the mail. Inside the house, everything was achingly familiar, yet different. Mark's photos were everywhere, formal portraits mixed with candid shots, including our wedding photos prominently displayed. My family had hidden all traces of him, but here he was, celebrated, mourned properly. Sit, Patricia commanded gently, guiding me to the kitchen table. You're too thin. When did you last eat a proper meal? I couldn't remember. The day's revelations had destroyed any appetite, and truthfully, I'd been subsisting on barely anything for months, my family's care consisting mainly of criticism about my appearance. As Patricia bustled around the kitchen, Anthony sat across from me. We know about the investigation. Our lawyer has been in touch with the DA's office. We're testifying about how your family blocked contact, what they told us. Every lie they told helps establish the conspiracy pattern. But that's not why we fought so hard to reach you, Dana added, sitting beside me. We have something from Mark. He set it up 2 weeks before the accident, right after he hired the investigator. Patricia returned with a sealed envelope and a key. He established a trust, said he had a bad feeling about your family's behavior, and wanted to protect certain things. He made me the trustee with specific instructions. If anything happened to him, I was to give this to you only when you were free from your family's influence. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was documentation for a trust containing assets I didn't know existed. Mark had liquidated some of his personal investments, sold items of value, and gathered about $300,000. But it wasn't the money that made me gasp. It was what else he'd protected. He moved things he knew you'd want safe, Patricia explained. Your grandmother's photo albums, her recipe collection, your parents' wedding album from before things went bad. He said your family would try to take everything meaningful, not just valuable, so he protected your memories too. The key was to a safety deposit box. The inventory list showed it contained my grandmother's letters to me over the years, small pieces of jewelry with sentimental rather than monetary value, and something that made my heart stop, video messages for Eileen, to be opened on specific dates. He spent the last week before he died recording things, Anthony said quietly. Birthday messages, anniversary messages, just talking to you about daily stuff. He said if something happened, he wanted you to still hear from him on important days. Mark had prepared for his death with such detail, such love. He'd known the danger he was in, but spent his final days ensuring I'd have comfort in his absence. There's more, Dana said, producing a thick folder. We documented everything. Every time your family turned us away, every lie they told, every intercepted letter. Patricia hired an investigator too, hoping to find evidence of their interference. Their investigator's report corroborated everything James Wu had found and more. Photos of my family removing boxes from my home during my hospital stay. Records of Mom calling various family friends to warn them about my fragile state and ask them not to contact me. Even evidence that she'd had my mail forwarded to her address temporarily and never restored it. 6 weeks after the funeral, Patricia said, returning with a plate of food that she set firmly in front of me, I ran into your Aunt Caroline at the grocery store. She said she'd been told I was harassing you, that she should call police if I tried to contact you again. Your mother had poisoned every well of support you had. The scale of the isolation campaign was breathtaking. While telling me everyone had abandoned me, my family had been actively blocking anyone who tried to reach out. They'd created a perfect prison of loneliness, making themselves my only source of support, while systematically draining my resources. Why didn't you go to the police earlier? I asked, though I suspected the answer. We tried, Anthony said bitterly. They said it was a family dispute. Without evidence of a crime, they couldn't intervene. Your mother played the concerned parent perfectly, and we looked like interfering in-laws. It wasn't until Wu contacted us that we understood the full scope. Patricia sat beside me, taking my hands. We failed you once by not pushing harder. We won't fail you again. This is your home now for as long as you need, your real family. Looking around the table at these people who'd loved Mark, who'd loved me, who'd fought against lies to reach me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year: safety. Real, unconditional safety. We have Sunday dinner every week, Dana said softly. Mark's chair has been empty waiting. We'd set your place too, hoping. Now you're here. I don't deserve, I began, but Patricia cut me off. Stop. That's your mother's voice, not yours. You deserve love, support, family. Mark knew it. We know it. It's time you knew it too. As I sat in that warm kitchen eating homemade lasagna while Mark's family shared stories and memories, I realized the cruelest part of my birth family's plan. They hadn't just tried to steal money or property. They'd tried to steal love itself, convincing me I was alone when I was actually surrounded by people desperate to help me. But love, real love, is patient. It waits. It persists. And now finally, it had found its way back to me. That evening at the Morrison house after dinner and tears and shared memories, James Wu arrived with a briefcase that would crack the case wide open. Patricia had called him, insisting he join our gathering since he'd been part of Mark's protection plan all along. I need to show you something disturbing. Wu began pulling out a toxicology report. After discovering the depth of your family's financial crimes, I had a colleague run some tests. Eileen, do you remember feeling unusually tired during family visits? Mental fog, difficulty concentrating? I nodded slowly. Mom said it was part of my recovery, post-traumatic stress making me fuzzy. We tested hair samples from your brush, the one Mark's family kept from your last visit here versus recent samples. You were being systematically drugged with benzodiazepines, small doses mixed into drinks or food, enough to make you compliant and confused, but not enough to trigger obvious symptoms. The room erupted. Anthony slammed his fist on the table while Dana gasped. Patricia went pale, reaching for my hand, but I sat frozen pieces clicking into place. The coffee Mom lovingly brought each visit, the special tea she insisted would help with anxiety, the way I'd sign documents without really reading them, too foggy to focus. That's how she got away with it, I whispered. I thought I was just grieving traumatized, but she was keeping me sedated. Wu nodded grimly. The doses were carefully calibrated. Medical records show your mother asked detailed questions about your prescriptions, claiming she needed to avoid interactions. In reality, she was determining exactly how much she could give you without causing dangerous reactions. He produced another document, security footage from my apartment building during my recovery. Time-stamped videos showed my family's visits, but what I hadn't noticed before was the pattern. Mom always arrived with beverages, always insisted I drink them during the visit, always stayed until I finished them. Within an hour, the footage showed me becoming noticeably less coordinated, more passive. There's more, Wu continued. Your neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, documented something crucial. He pulled out a series of photos. She noticed your family removing items during each visit and started photographing everything. The images were damning. Mom carrying out filing boxes labeled financial records. Todd loading Mark's computer and external drives into his truck. Rachel with arms full of photo albums. Dad hauling away Mark's father's antique desk, a piece Mark had treasured. Mrs. Patterson tries to intervene, Wu explained. But your mother claimed you'd asked them to store things temporarily, that seeing Mark's belongings was too painful. Mrs. Patterson didn't buy it, so she documented everything and reached out to me through Mark's obituary guest book of all places. She'd seen my name listed as a family friend. Patricia interjected. That explains what they were looking for at Jennifer Wu's apartment. Mark must have backed up evidence about their behavior on drives they took. Wu pulled out his phone. Speaking of evidence, I received this an hour ago from the forensics team. He showed us an email with attached files. They recovered deleted texts from Rachel's phone. The conspiracy goes deeper. He read aloud, Rachel to Mom, January 2025. The medication is working. She signed 3 documents today without reading. Mom to Rachel. Good. We need the power of attorney finalized before she starts recovering too much. Double the dose in tomorrow's tea. Rachel, isn't that dangerous? Mom, I know exactly how much she can handle. I've done this before. Done this before, Dana repeated, horrified. With who? Wu's expression darkened. We're investigating 3 suspicious deaths in your extended family over the past 20 years. Elderly relatives who died shortly after changing their wills in your mother's favor. Each had documented personality changes and confusion in their final months. The scope of my mother's crimes was expanding into serial killer territory. How many vulnerable family members had she slowly poisoned while playing the devoted caretaker? But here's what will ensure maximum sentences, Wu said, pulling out another folder. Your cousin Marie contacted me today. She's been in hiding in Oregon, but she's willing to testify. Marie's alive, I gasped. We'd been told she'd moved to Europe and cut all contact after a mental breakdown. Very much alive and very angry. She's been documenting your mother's crimes for years, building her own case. She has recordings, documents, evidence of previous poisonings. She's been waiting for someone else to come forward, too terrified to face your mother alone. Wu played an audio recording on his phone. Marie's voice, older but unmistakable, filled the room. Linda Morrison is evil incarnate. She nearly killed me with her helpful teas and vitamin supplements, made me think I was losing my mind. I signed away Dad's entire estate, believing I was too sick to manage it. It wasn't until I escaped and got clean that I realized what she'd done. I've been hiding ever since, but I kept everything. Every receipt, every document, every piece of evidence. If someone else has finally stood up to her, I'll come back. We can stop her together. The room sat in stunned silence. My mother wasn't just a greedy relative. She was a calculated predator who'd been perfecting her methods for decades. The district attorney is building a RICO case, Wu explained. Your family operated as an organized crime syndicate with your mother as the head. The federal charges alone could result in life imprisonment. Anthony spoke up. What about international crimes? If they were planning to flee with the stolen money? Wu smiled grimly. Already investigating. Todd had been researching countries without extradition treaties. Rachel had opened offshore accounts in the Caymans. They were planning to run once they'd drained everything. Patricia's phone rang. She answered, listened, then handed it to me. It's Detective Morrison. She says it's urgent. Eileen, the detective's voice was tense. Your father is ready to make a full confession. He's offering to testify against your mother in exchange for a reduced sentence. But he'll only talk to you first. Can you come to the station? I looked around the table at my real family, Mark's family, who nodded encouragingly. We'll come with you. Diana said firmly. "You don't face this alone anymore." As we prepared to leave for the police station, Wu made one final revelation. "Eileen, there's something else. We found your grandmother's real final letter to you. Your mother intercepted it years ago but never destroyed it. She kept it as some sort of trophy." He handed me an envelope yellowed with age, my name written in Grandma's careful script. Inside, her words brought fresh tears. "My dearest Eileen, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably wondering why I left you everything. The truth is simple. You're the only one who loved me for me, not my money. Your mother has been stealing from me for years, thinking I didn't notice. I noticed everything. I've protected what I can in trusts she can't touch, but I fear she'll still try to take from you. Be careful, my sweet girl. Your mother's greed has no limits, and she'll use your good heart against you. Find someone who loves you truly, not for what you have, but for who you are. Build your own family, and never ever let Linda make you feel guilty for receiving what is rightfully yours. All my love, Grandma. P.S. Check the false bottom in my jewelry box. I left something special just for you." Through my tears, I realized even Grandma had known. Everyone had tried to protect me from my mother except me. But now, finally, I was ready to fight back. "Let's go hear what Dad has to say," I said, standing with new resolve. "It's time to end this properly." The investigation was revealing tentacles of crime stretching back decades, but at its center was always my mother, the woman who'd given me life and then spent years trying to steal it back piece by piece. The police station interrogation room was cold and sterile, nothing like the warm Morrison kitchen I'd just left. Dad sat across from me looking like he'd aged 20 years in 12 hours. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his perfect hair disheveled, and his hands shook with what I recognized now as withdrawal, probably from whatever cocktail of medications Mom had been feeding him too. "Eileen," he began, then stopped, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Good, because you won't get it. Mark is dead because of you." He flinched. "I didn't know about the murder plan, I swear. Linda told me Todd was just going to talk to him, convince him to be more generous with the family. When we heard about the accident—" He paused, swallowing hard. I wanted to believe it really was an accident. Detective Morrison, sitting beside me, pushed a digital recorder closer. "Mr. Morrison, you indicated you have information about other crimes." Dad nodded, finally looking up. His eyes were hollow-haunted. "Linda's been doing this for 37 years. I need to tell you about Marie first. She's the key to everything." "We know Marie's alive," I said coldly. "No thanks to you." "You don't know why she ran," Dad countered. "Linda didn't just drug her. She tried to have her committed. Permanently. She had a doctor on payroll, Dr. Harold Vance. He's retired now, lives in Florida. But 20 years ago, he was willing to sign commitment papers for the right price." The detective leaned forward. "Are you saying your wife paid a doctor to falsely commit family members to psychiatric facilities?" "3 times that I know of. Marie escaped before the papers were finalized, but Cousin Robert and Linda's own brother Thomas, they weren't so lucky." My mind reeled. Uncle Thomas had been institutionalized when I was 10. We'd been told he had a complete breakdown, that it was for his own good. I'd sent him Christmas cards to the facility for years before being told he didn't want contact with family. "Thomas died in that facility 5 years later," Dad continued. "Supposedly suicide. Linda inherited his share of their parents' estate. Robert lasted 18 months before a visiting psychiatrist realized he was perfectly sane and started asking questions. By then, Linda had already liquidated his assets." Detective Morrison was typing rapidly on her tablet. "We'll need Dr. Vance's full information. This constitutes murder for hire, false imprisonment fraud." "I have records," Dad said quietly. "I've been keeping insurance, you could say. Documents, recordings, evidence, hidden in a safety deposit box Linda doesn't know about. I'll give you access to everything." "Why now?" I asked. "Why betray her after all these years of enabling—" Dad's composure finally cracked. "Because she was planning to do it to you. After Todd killed Mark, she said it was perfect timing. With your grief and the drugs she was giving you, she could have you declared incompetent within 6 months. She already had Dr. Vance's replacement lined up, some young psychiatrist with gambling debts." The room spun. My own mother had been planning to lock me away in a psychiatric facility while stealing everything I had. "But Marie's not just a victim," Dad continued. "She's been investigating Linda for years. She has evidence about other victims. Elderly relatives who died mysteriously, family friends who lost fortunes. Your mother has been running a complex criminal enterprise disguised as family devotion. Speaking of Marie, Patricia interjected from where she sat behind me. She called while we were driving here. She's flying in tomorrow with boxes of evidence, 20 years worth of documentation. Dad's face showed genuine surprise. Marie's coming back. Linda will lose her mind. Marie knows things about Linda's first marriage. First marriage. This was news to everyone, including the detective. Before me, Linda was married to Gregory Paulson, wealthy real estate developer. He died in a boating accident 2 years into the marriage. Linda inherited everything. She used that money to seduce me, presenting herself as a grieving widow with good business sense. But Marie investigated that death. Gregory was an expert swimmer. The boat showed signs of tampering. The detective pulled up records on her computer. Gregory Paulson died 1985. Case closed as accidental drowning. Insurance payout, Jesus, $3 million in 1985 money. Linda used it to build her image, Dad explained. Charitable donations, social climbing, creating the perfect facade. By the time she targeted me, she was established in society. I was a young banker impressed by her sophistication. I never questioned the source of her wealth. When did you realize what she was? I asked. Too late. After we were married, after you kids were born. By then she had leverage, affairs she'd orchestrated and photographed, financial crimes she'd involved me in without my realizing. Every time I thought about leaving or exposing her, she'd remind me what I'd lose. My career, my reputation, my children. So you chose yourself over us, Anthony said coldly from behind Patricia. Yes, Dad admitted. I was a coward, but I draw the line at murder and false imprisonment. That's why I'm here. The detective's phone buzzed. She read the message and her eyebrows shot up. The warrant team just finished at your house. They found something interesting in your wife's home office. She showed Dad a photo on her phone. Recognize this. Dad went pale. That's her planning journal. She documents everything. It's her ego. She likes to review her successes. It's being processed now, but preliminary review shows detailed plans for multiple crimes spanning decades, including, the detective paused, a section about Mark's accident, written 2 months before it happened. 2 months. My mother had been planning my husband's murder for 2 months. There's one more thing, Dad said urgently. Linda has a partner, someone you haven't caught yet, someone still on the outside who handles certain situations for her. Before he could continue, the interrogation room door burst open. A uniformed officer rushed in. Detective, we have a situation. Rachel Morrison is in the hospital, apparent suicide attempt in her cell. What? I jumped up. Is she okay? She's stable, but she left a note. Says there's someone else involved, someone who's going to finish what they started with Mrs. Morrison here. Dad grabbed my hand the first time he'd touched me in years. Get somewhere safe. Linda's partner. I don't know who it is, but they're dangerous. They're the one who actually tampers with the boats. The cars makes things look like accidents. Linda plans, but this person executes. The room erupted in activity. Officers were dispatched, security protocols activated. Patricia and Anthony flanked me protectively as Detective Morrison coordinated response teams. We're putting you in a protective custody, she told me, until we identify this partner. But I thought about Mark always one step ahead, always protecting me. Wait, check with James Wu first. If Mark knew about Mom's previous crimes, he might have identified the partner. Wu answered on the first ring. When the detective explained the situation, his response chilled everyone. I know who it is. I've been tracking him. Check your parking lot cameras right now. Silver BMW license plate starting with JTK. The detective pulled up the feed. There in the visitor lot sat a silver BMW. The driver was barely visible, but something about the profile was familiar. Zoom in, I said, my voice barely a whisper. As the image clarified, I gasped. I knew that face. We all knew that face. It was Dr. Marcus Kramer, my psychiatrist during recovery. The man who'd prescribed my medications. The man who'd had private sessions with Mom about my treatment plan. The man who'd been drugging me under medical supervision while Mom drugged me at home. He's not just her partner. Wu's voice came through the speaker. He's her son from the first marriage. She gave him up for adoption to avoid suspicion after Gregory's death, then reconnected with him 20 years later. He's been her hidden weapon ever since. A serial killer mother-son team, and I'd been their next target. Lock down the building, Detective Morrison barked. No one leaves, and get me everything on Marcus Kramer now. As alarms began to sound and the police station went into lockdown, I realized the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. But this time I wasn't alone. This time I had an army. And Mom's secret weapon was about to become her downfall. The police station lockdown lasted 3 hours. Dr. Marcus Kramer, or rather Marcus Paulson, my half-brother I never knew existed, was apprehended trying to leave the parking lot. In his car, police found a medical bag containing enough sedatives to kill syringes, and disturbingly a folder with my name on it containing detailed notes about my treatment-resistant depression and recommendations for immediate institutionalization. I watched through the observation window as they brought him in. The man I'd trusted with my mental health, who'd sat across from me for dozens of sessions, pretending to help while secretly documenting ways to destroy me. He moved with the same calculated grace as Mom, the genetic connection obvious now that I knew to look for it. Detective Morrison emerged from his initial interrogation looking shaken. "He's not talking, but we found his laptop. Eileen, the depth of this conspiracy. Your mother groomed him from childhood for this role. She tracked him down when he was 18, paid for medical school, shaped him into her perfect accomplice." The evidence from Marcus's laptop was overwhelming. Encrypted files detailed 15 years of collaboration with Mom. Patient files showed how they'd selected victims, always family members or connections with significant assets and few outside protections. Medical records documented the slow poisoning of at least 12 people, each death carefully orchestrated to appear natural. But it was the file labeled EM Final Phase that made everyone in the room go silent. "According to this," Detective Morrison said carefully, "your commitment was scheduled for next week. The paperwork was already prepared. Marcus had lined up 2 other doctors to sign off on your involuntary hospitalization. Once inside, the plan was to increase your medication until you were either permanently incapacitated or dead," I finished, "like Uncle Thomas." The plan was meticulous. They documented my deteriorating condition for months, creating a false medical trail. Mom's concerned calls to Marcus about my paranoid delusions regarding family. Marcus's notes about my resistance to treatment and increasing hostility. Even staged incidents where I'd supposedly threatened self-harm during sessions I remembered differently. "They were going to make it look like suicide," Anthony said, reading over the detective's shoulder. "Just like Mark's uncle in the facility." Dad, who'd been moved to a secure conference room, was brought back in. When shown Marcus's files, his remaining composure shattered completely. "I didn't know about him," he whispered. "Linda told me she'd miscarried after Gregory died. I had no idea she'd had the baby given him up, then recruited him later. My God, she's been playing a longer game than any of us imagined." "We need everything," Detective Morrison told him. "Every detail, every crime you witnessed or suspected. This is now a federal case. The FBI is taking over." What followed was 6 hours of the most harrowing testimony I'd ever heard. Dad laid out 37 years of criminal activity. Names, dates, amounts. How Mom had identified targets at charity events. How she'd researched their family structures, their vulnerabilities. How she'd inserted herself as the caring friend, the devoted sister-in-law, the concerned family member. She called it gardening, Dad said. Planting seeds of trust, cultivating relationships, then harvesting assets when the time was right. She kept score, literally. There's a ledger in her office safe-rating each victim by difficulty and profit. The FBI arrived as Dad was detailing the European accounts. Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to Rachel's friend, took over the investigation with ruthless efficiency. By midnight, international warrants were being issued, assets were being frozen, and a nationwide manhunt was underway for other potential victims. Patricia never left my side through it all. When I swayed from exhaustion and shock, she steadied me. When the revelations became too much, she reminded me to breathe. Mark's family formed a protective circle that Mom's twisted version could never match. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Rachel was conscious and asking for me. Against FBI recommendations, but with Detective Morrison as escort, I went to the hospital. Rachel looked small in the hospital bed, her designer image replaced by a hospital gown, and the raw truth of what she'd become. Her suicide attempt had been half-hearted, pills that made her sick but weren't lethal. A cry for help more than a real attempt. "I couldn't be her," she whispered when she saw me. "Mom wanted me to be like Marcus, cold, calculating, willing to kill. But watching Mark die, I can't stop seeing his face. I helped kill your husband, Eileen. I helped murder the only person who ever truly loved you." Why? It was the only word I could manage. Because I was weak. Because she made me believe you'd stolen our life, our rightful place. She started when I was 12, telling me how Grandma should have loved me more, how you manipulated everyone with your sweetness. By the time I realized she was lying, I was in too deep. She had things on me, too. Things I'd done in college. She'd covered up crimes I'd committed, thinking I was just being clever. Rachel's confession poured out like poison being expelled. The theft ring in college that Mom had made disappear. The professor Rachel had falsely accused of harassment when he'd threatened to fail her. The married man whose wife had died in a suspicious accident after threatening to expose their affair. She cleaned up every mess, then held it over me, just like Dad, just like Todd. We were all her puppets, but Todd liked it. He enjoyed the violence, the power. When Mom suggested Mark needed to go, Todd volunteered before she even finished talking. "Is there anyone else?" Detective Morrison asked. "Any other accomplices we don't know about?" Rachel shook her head weakly. "Marcus was her secret weapon. The rest of us were just tools, disposable tools. You realize she was planning to eliminate us too eventually. Once you were gone, once she had everything, we'd have been loose ends." The truth of it hung in the air. Mom's greed had no loyalty, no limits. She would have consumed her own children once they'd outlived their usefulness. Rachel looked at me one last time. "I know you can't forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But testifying against her is the only decent thing I can do now. I'll tell them everything. Every single crime. Maybe it will save someone else." As we left the hospital, Agent Chen was waiting with more news. "We've located Marie Thornton. She's agreed to enter protective custody and provide her evidence. Between her documentation and what we've found tonight, we're looking at the largest family fraud case in U.S. history." The next morning, as dawn broke, over a world fundamentally changed from 24 hours ago, I sat in Patricia's kitchen again. The news was playing on the small TV reporters, breathlessly covering the Black Widow serial killer and her Doctor of Death son. Mom's charity lady photo smiled from the screen while commentators discussed the dozens of potential victims across 3 states. How did I not see it? I asked the room at large. How did I live 28 years and not see what she was? "Because you're good," Wu said simply. He'd arrived with boxes of additional evidence and the air of someone whose life's work was complete. "Mark saw it immediately because he came from outside, but you were raised in the poison. You developed immunity to small doses while never recognizing the toxin." "What happens now?" Dana asked. Agent Chen, who'd joined us for coffee and strategy, laid out the timeline. "Your mother and Marcus face federal charges that guarantee life without parole. Todd's looking at death penalty for Mark's murder. Your father will likely get 10 to 15 years, but might see reduced time for cooperation. Rachel. Depends on her testimony, but she's looking at 20 years minimum." "And me?" I asked. "You survive," Patricia said firmly. "You heal. You honor Mark's memory by living the life he protected. You use your resources, both financial and emotional, to help other victims. You transform this poison into purpose." She was right. Mom had created victims for 37 years. Maybe I could spend the next 37 helping them heal. As if reading my thoughts, Wu slid a card across the table. "The prosecutor mentioned you might want to establish a foundation for victims of family financial abuse. I know someone who specializes in setting up nonprofits if you're interested." I picked up the card, feeling the first spark of purpose since Mark's death. Mom had taught me how evil could hide behind a loving smile. Maybe I could teach others to recognize the signs before it was too late. "Mark would love that," Anthony said quietly, using pain to prevent more pain. Very teacher-like. Outside media vans were already gathering. The story would dominate headlines for months. But inside this kitchen, surrounded by real family planning, how to transform tragedy into purpose, I felt something I'd thought was lost forever: hope. The reckoning had come. Justice would be served. And from the ashes of my mother's criminal empire, something good would grow. Mark had believed in my strength. It was time to prove him right. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom in downtown Chicago, watching the woman who gave me life-stand trial for attempting to steal it. The media circus outside was overwhelming, but inside, there was only the truth methodically presented by prosecutors who'd spent months building an airtight case. Mom looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, her perfectly coiffed society lady image replaced by gray roots and harsh lighting. But her eyes remained calculating, scanning the courtroom like a predator searching for weakness. When our eyes met, she smiled, that same loving mother smile that had hidden decades of murder. The prosecution's case was devastating. Financial records showing systematic theft spanning 37 years. Medical files documenting slow poisoning of 15 victims. Email chains planning murders. Photos of boats with tampered engines, brake lines with precise cuts. Medication bottles with falsified labels. The sheer scope made several jurors visibly ill. But it was Rachel's testimony that provided the most shocking revelations. She took the stand on day 3, shackled but clear-eyed. The plea deal she'd negotiated required complete honesty, and she delivered. But what none of us expected was the bombshell she dropped about Marcus. Mom started grooming Marcus when he was 14. Rachel began, her voice stronger than during our hospital conversation. She didn't just recruit her son, she created him. I found her journals from that period. She wrote about molding the perfect instrument, about raising him to be unencumbered by conscience. The prosecutor displayed excerpts from Mom's journals, each entry more chilling than the last. Marcus shows promise. No emotional attachment to victims. I've started having him practice on animals, building his tolerance. By medical school, he'll be ready for human subjects. Tested Marcus with cousin William. He administered the medications without hesitation. No guilt response afterward. My greatest success. Marcus suggested we could streamline the process by opening a private practice together. My boy thinks bigger than I ever did. Gregory's genes clearly dominated. Rachel continued. She was proud of creating a sociopath, but she miscalculated. Marcus wasn't loyal to her. He was loyal to the game. I have recordings of him discussing eliminating Mom once she'd outlived her usefulness. He saw her as a mentor to surpass, not a mother to obey. This revelation cracked Mom's composure. She half rose from her seat before her lawyer pulled her down. The woman who'd controlled every variable for decades hadn't seen betrayal coming from her own creation. "Play the recording," the prosecutor instructed. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom, cultured and cold. "Linda's getting sloppy. The Morrison situation is too high profile. After we secure the assets, she becomes a liability. I've already prepared the medications. A stroke would be believable at her age." On the tape, Mom laughed. "My clever boy. But let's finish with Eileen first, one victim at a time." "Of course, Mother, though technically you'll be victim number 38. I do so appreciate the symmetry." The recording ended with both of them laughing about murder statistics like other families might discuss baseball scores. When Todd took the stand in his own defense, he tried to paint himself as another victim of Mom's manipulation. But under cross-examination, his true nature emerged. The prosecutor played security footage from Mark's school the day of the confrontation. "You seem quite enthusiastic about threatening Mr. Morrison," she observed as the video showed Todd shoving Mark against a wall. "He was disrespecting our family," Todd snarled, forgetting his victim act. "Acting like he was better than us because he had some moral high ground. Mom was right. He was an obstacle." "So you removed the obstacle." "I did what needed doing. Someone had to protect family interests." "By murdering an innocent man." Todd's lawyer tried to object, but Todd was beyond controlling. "Innocent. He turned Eileen against us, made her think she was too good for her own blood. Yeah, I ran him off the road, and you know what? I'd do it again." The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order while Todd's lawyer looked ready to faint. In one outburst, Todd had confirmed premeditated murder. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source, Marie Thornton, my cousin, who'd survived Mom's earlier attempt. She entered the courtroom with quiet dignity, 20 years of hiding having aged her, but not broken her spirit. "Linda Morrison is evil wearing a human mask," Marie stated simply. "She doesn't just steal money. She steals lives, sanity, hope. I spent years believing I was insane because of her gaslighting, years hiding, terrified she'd find me and finish what she started." Marie presented her evidence recordings of Mom discussing drugging schedules, photos of Mom meeting with Dr. Vance about commitment papers, financial records showing the systematic draining of Marie's father's estate. But most damning was a video Marie had secretly recorded during her final family dinner before fleeing. In it, Mom spoke casually about Marie's upcoming rest cure at a wonderful facility, while Marie, clearly drugged, struggled to focus. "Poor dear," Mom's voice cooed on the tape. "So confused lately. But don't worry, we'll take good care of everything while you're getting better." The camera had captured Mom's reflection in a mirror, showing her adding powder to Marie's wine while maintaining concerned conversation. "That was the night I ran," Marie testified. "I realized I'd never leave that facility alive, So I pretended to drink, excused myself, and drove straight to Canada with only the clothes on my back. I've been looking over my shoulder ever since. When Marcus testified via video link from federal prison, he'd been denied bail as a flight risk. His complete lack of emotion chilled the courtroom. He discussed murders like medical procedures, referring to victims as subjects and deaths as successful outcomes. "My mother taught me that emotional attachment was weakness," he stated. "That family was just a resource to be managed. I simply took her lessons to their logical conclusion." "Including planning to murder her?" the prosecutor asked. "Of course. She taught me too well to leave such an obvious loose end. Linda understood this. It's why she was proud of me." Mom's reaction to her son's cold betrayal was the only genuine emotion I'd ever seen from her. Pure rage at being outmaneuvered by her own protege. Character witnesses for the victims painted a picture of lives destroyed. Mark's principal testified about what a dedicated teacher he'd been. Elderly relatives of Mom's earlier victims spoke about mysterious illnesses that suddenly appeared when Mom became their caretaker. A forensic accountant detailed over $40 million stolen across decades. Through it all, I sat between Patricia and Anthony, drawing strength from their presence. Dana held my hand during the worst revelations. Wu sat behind us, finally seeing his investigation reach its conclusion. We were an odd family, bonded by tragedy, but genuine in our support. The defense's case was brief and futile. Mom's lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity due to childhood trauma, but psychiatric evaluations showed a woman fully aware of her actions. Dad's testimony for the prosecution had eliminated any doubt about her mental competence. She kept detailed records of every crime he'd stated. Proud of her efficiency. She wasn't insane, she was evil. There's a difference. On the final day of testimony, a surprise witness appeared. Grandma's elderly best friend, Vivian Chen, 93 years old, but sharp as a tack. She'd flown in from Hong Kong where she'd retired. "I warned Stella about Linda 40 years ago," Vivian testified. "Saw right through her act. Stella protected what she could set up those trusts, but she knew Linda would never stop trying. Her last words to me were, 'Protect Eileen when I'm gone.' I failed in that duty, but I'm here now." Vivian produced letters from my grandmother expressing fears about Mom's intentions, documenting early thefts, seeking legal advice about protecting future inheritances. The correspondence painted a picture of a grandmother desperately trying to shield her granddaughter from beyond the grave. In closing arguments, the prosecutor was brilliant. Linda Morrison spent 37 years perfecting the art of murder disguised as love. She killed with pills instead of guns, with manipulation instead of violence. She turned family into a weapon and love into a trap. The evidence shows not a woman driven by mental illness, but a predator driven by greed. The defense's closing was desperate, trying to shift blame to Marcus to paint Mom as a victim of her own traumatic past. But the jury saw through it just as Mark had seen through Mom's facade. Deliberation took only 6 hours. As the jury filed back in, Mom finally looked at me with something approaching genuine emotion. Not love, not regret, but curiosity. As if wondering how her greatest victim had become her downfall. "Guilty on all counts." The words echoed through the courtroom. Murder, conspiracy, fraud, racketeering. The list went on for minutes. Life without parole on multiple counts. Consecutive sentences ensuring she'd never see freedom. Todd received the death penalty for Mark's murder. Marcus got life without parole for the medical murders. Rachel, due to her cooperation, received 25 years with possibility of parole in 15. Dad got 12 years for financial crimes and conspiracy. As they led Mom away, she turned back one final time. "I made you strong," she called out. "Everything you survived made you who you are. You should thank me." "I thank Mark," I replied clearly. "He showed me what real love looks like, something you'll never understand." Her face contorted with rage as they dragged her away, still screaming about ungrateful children and stolen inheritance. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of reporters waited. But I wasn't alone. Patricia stood on my right, Wu on my left. Mark's family surrounded me like armor. Marie joined us, finally free to reclaim her life. "Ms. Morrison, how does it feel to see justice served?" a reporter called. I thought of Mark, of all the victims who couldn't be here, of the years stolen and lives destroyed. "It feels like the beginning," I said. The Mark Morrison Foundation for Family Fraud Victims starts taking applications next week. My mother created victims for 37 years. I plan to spend the rest of my life helping them heal. As we walked away from the courthouse, snow began to fall. It felt like cleansing, like the world washing itself clean of Linda Morrison's poison. Tomorrow would begin the real work of building something positive from the ashes. But today, justice had been served. Mark could rest peacefully, and I could finally truly begin to live. 1 year after the trial that exposed my family's web of murder and fraud, I stood in the nursery of my new home 5 states away from Chicago. The walls were painted soft yellow. Sunshine dreams. Mark and I had called this color when we'd picked it out for our future children. Now our miracle child moved within me a flutter of life that still took my breath away. Patricia knocked gently on the doorframe. "The news crew is here for the anniversary interview. Are you ready?" I nodded, smoothing my hands over my 7-month belly. The pregnancy we'd fought so hard for, the final embryo that had somehow survived the nightmare, was thriving. Dr. Sarah Kim, my new obstetrician, who had no connection to my past, called it remarkable. I called it Mark's final gift. Downstairs, the living room had been transformed into a makeshift studio. This wasn't just any interview. It was with Rebecca Chen, the investigative journalist whose book about the case, Blood Money: The Morrison Murders, had spent 6 months on the bestseller list. All proceeds went to the foundation, another small victory over Mom's greed. "Eileen, you look radiant," Rebecca said warmly as the crew finished setup. "How are you feeling?" "Grateful," I answered honestly. Grateful and ready to share the next chapter. The cameras rolled, and Rebecca began with the question everyone wanted answered. "It's been 1 year since your mother and brother were sentenced to life in prison. How do you process that?" "I don't think of them as my mother and brother anymore," I said steadily. Linda Morrison and Todd Morrison were predators who happened to share my DNA. My real family is here with me now. I gestured to where Patricia, Dana, and Anthony sat off-camera, my constant supports. "Tell us about the Foundation's work this year." My heart lifted at this topic. The Mark Morrison Foundation has helped 237 victims of family financial abuse. We've recovered over $18 million in stolen assets, provided free legal representation to 60 families, and funded therapy for anyone who needs it. We've also successfully lobbied for Mark's Law in 12 states, legislation that makes family financial abuse a specific felony with mandatory sentences. That's incredible progress for 1 year. We're just getting started. Next month, we open our first residential facility, Morrison House, where victims can stay while rebuilding their lives. It's on the property where Mark taught at-risk youth camping skills. He always said that land would serve a greater purpose someday. Rebecca leaned forward. "And personally, how has your life changed?" I smiled, feeling the baby kick. "I'm living, really living, not just surviving. I'm in therapy, real therapy with a trustworthy doctor. I'm part of Mark's family now. We have Sunday dinners and holiday traditions. I'm building friendships with people who knew nothing about my money before caring about me as a person. And in 2 months, I'll be a mother." "You're having Mark's baby," Rebecca said gently. "How does that feel, given everything that's happened?" "Like redemption," I answered, tears threatening but held back. Mark and I went through 3 years of IVF treatments. This little one was our last embryo transferred just before he died. For it to survive everything, the coma, the drugs Mom was giving me, the trauma, it feels like Mark protecting us one more time. "Have you chosen a name?" "Marcus." At Rebecca's shocked expression, I explained, not after Mom's accomplice, but to reclaim it, to prove that names don't determine destiny. Marcus James Morrison, after his father and the investigator who saved my life. "Speaking of investigations, there's been a development in your cousin Marie's case." I nodded, glancing at Wu, who joined us for this part. "Marie and I have been working with federal investigators to uncover more of Mom's victims. We've identified 8 more suspicious deaths and are helping families exhume bodies for proper testing. It won't bring them back, but it might bring closure." "And your father? He's been cooperating from prison." "Richard Morrison has provided over 300 hours of testimony. He's helped recover hidden accounts, identified previously unknown victims, and testified in 6 related trials. He writes me letters I don't read, but I'm told he's genuinely remorseful. It doesn't change what he did, but his cooperation has helped many families find answers." Rebecca paused before the difficult question. "Rachel was denied parole last month. Any thoughts?" "Rachel made her choices. She watched my husband die and protected his killer. but I've been told she's earning her degree in prison working with other inmates on literacy programs. Maybe she'll find redemption eventually. That's between her and whatever conscience she has left. The therapy recordings between Linda and Marcus were released last month. Many found them disturbing. They should be disturbing. They show a mother deliberately creating a sociopath celebrating his lack of empathy. But they also show that evil isn't born. It's made. It's taught. That's why the Foundation focuses so heavily on early intervention, helping young people recognize manipulation before they're trapped. What would you say to someone currently trapped in a toxic family situation? I looked directly at the camera, imagining all the people suffering as I had. You're not crazy. The confusion you feel, the guilt, the sense that something's wrong but you can't quite name it. Trust those instincts. Document everything. Reach out for help. The Mark Morrison Foundation has a hotline, 1-800-SAFE-FAM. You don't have to suffer alone. Your story has inspired proposed legislation nationwide. Tell us about that. The Morrison Act would create federal oversight for family financial abuse cases. Right now, these crimes often fall through jurisdictional cracks. The act would establish a dedicated FBI unit, mandatory reporting requirements, and interstate coordination. It's in committee now, but we're hopeful. Rebecca smiled. You've accomplished so much in a year. What's next? Living, I said simply. Raising my son, growing the foundation, speaking at conferences to train law enforcement and medical professionals to recognize signs of family abuse, and Sunday dinners with my real family, the simple things that Linda tried to steal from me. Any regrets? Only that I didn't see the truth sooner, that Mark had to die for me to wake up. But I can't live in regret. It's another kind of poison. I choose to honor Mark by helping others escape before it's too late. One final question. Do you ever visit Linda in prison? No. She sent letters, probably manipulative masterpieces. I burn them unread. She has no place in my life or my child's life. The only power she has left is what victims give her, and I give her nothing. As the interview wrapped up, Rebecca surprised me. I have something for you. We received this at the network addressed to you. She handed me a wrapped package. Inside was a photo album I'd never seen before. Pictures of Mark I didn't know existed. Candid shots from his classroom photos with students, images capturing his joy in teaching. A note was attached. Mrs. Morrison, we were Mark's students from 2018-2023. He talked about you all the time, showed us pictures, told us how love could overcome anything. When we heard what happened, we wanted you to have these. He was the best teacher we ever had. We're becoming teachers too, because of him. The Future Educators Club. I broke down then, hormones and emotion, overwhelming professional composure. 20 young people had chosen education because of Mark's influence. His legacy would touch thousands of students he'd never meet. Patricia was beside me instantly, Wu offering tissues, the Morrison family surrounding me with love. Even Rebecca had tears in her eyes as the cameras captured this unexpected moment. Later, after the crew left, we gathered for dinner. Marie had arrived bringing her daughters I'd just learned existed. Teenage twins who'd grown up believing their extended family was dangerous because it was true. They were shy but warming up, especially to Patricia's cooking. Aunt Eileen, one asked tentatively, is it really over? The bad people are really gone? Yes, sweetheart. The bad people are locked away forever. You're safe now. We all are. As we sat around that table, Patricia, Dana, Anthony, Marie, her daughters Wu and his wife, Mrs. Patterson, who'd moved to be closer, and several foundation volunteers who'd become friends, I realized this was what family actually looked like. Not blood bonds weaponized for greed, but chosen connections strengthened by love. My phone buzzed with the notification from the Foundation's hotline. Another victim reaching out, another life we might save. Tomorrow I'd return to the work, but tonight was for family. A toast, Anthony proposed, raising his glass. To Mark, who saw the truth. To Eileen, who survived it. To Marcus James, who'll grow up knowing real love. And to chosen family stronger than blood. We toasted, the baby kicked, and for the first time since that horrible birthday, when I locked out my blood relatives, I felt completely at peace. Mom had been wrong about making me strong. I'd always been strong. Mark had simply helped me see it. Outside, snow began falling again, but inside was warmth, laughter, and love. The poison had been purged, the healing was real, and the future finally was bright. As I prepared for bed, I stopped by the nursery one more time. Above the crib hung a photo of Mark and me on our wedding day, both of us radiant with joy and hope. Next to it was a letter I'd written for Marcus James to read when he was older, explaining his father's courage and sacrifice. "Your daddy was a teacher," I whispered to my belly. "He taught me the most important lesson of all, that real love protects, nurtures, and sacrifices. It doesn't manipulate, steal, or destroy. You'll grow up surrounded by real love, little one. That's my promise to you and to him." The baby responded with a strong kick, as if sealing the promise. In 2 months, Mark's son would enter a world where Linda Morrison had no power, where chosen family meant everything, and where his father's legacy lived on through every life saved by the foundation. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd fought for and won. And as I turned off the nursery light, I knew that somewhere Mark was proud. The girl he'd tried to protect had become a woman who protected others, the ultimate victory over those who'd tried to destroy us both. Love had won. It always does in the end. Thank you for listening to this story of survival, betrayal, and ultimately triumph. If you've experienced family financial abuse or manipulation, you're not alone. Share your thoughts below. Have you recognized similar warning signs in your own family? What would you do if you discovered your loved ones were not who they seemed? Please, like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of overcoming adversity, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not crazy for questioning toxic family dynamics. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need hope. Remember, real family isn't always blood. It's the people who stand by you when the truth comes out. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Until next time, may you find the courage to choose real love over toxic bonds, and may your chosen family bring you the peace you deserve.